Novato Unified School District Board of Trustees. It's April 23rd. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. The board did meet in closed session this evening, and we'll have Trustee Aguila report out the closed session items.
Yes. So for the closed session items, the board discussed pursuant to Government Code 54954.5B and 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property on C Street Village on 970 C Street. Agency negotiator Yancey Hawkins, negotiating parties, City of Novato under negotiations, price and items, and it was direction given only. The second item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54954.5B, conference with real property negotiators, property, parcel 1B, C Street, agency negotiator was Yancey Hawkins, negotiating parties, North Bay Children's Center, under negotiations, price and terms. It was direction given only. The next item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 48918C, considered stipulated agreements for expulsion. Okay, so I'm going to go to the item G, and that would be items, the next items that we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Chris Koska, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, Employees Organizations, Novato Federation of Teachers, NFT. And that was information only. And the next items we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Title Superintendent. That was information only. Okay, then we had three expulsions, or three other items. And that is on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, the Novato Unified School District Board of Trustees met in closed session to review the administrative hearings panel's recommendations on expulsion of student number 60114. Based on the review of the panel's recommendation, Trustee Millerick made the motion to expel. The student will be expelled for the 1 year for the following Ed Code violations: 48915A, 1E, 48900A1, and 48900A2, 48900K. Ed Codes violation. Trustee Mack, second the motion. And now we're going to take roll. Okay, so the roll vote.
Did you just say Trustee Millerick?
Trustee, okay, so we're going to go Trustee Millerick.
I vote aye.
Aye. Mel? No?
Aye.
And then we have,
Aye.
okay, Trustee Gasson, aye. And then Mac, aye. And then Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper and an aye.
Aye.
And, okay, so we got 7-0. And they're all, so
That's it? Then you
this
go to
is
the
it
next
for
one.
this one. Okay. On Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, the Novato Unified School District Board of Trustees met in closed session to review the administrative hearing panel's recommendation on an expulsion of student 5080. Based on the review of the panel's recommendation, Trustee Nell made the motion to expel and for 1 year for the following Ed Code violations: 48915A2, and then 48915A1, and E, 48900A1, 48900A2, and 48900K, Ed Codes violation. And Trustee Millerick, second the motion. And now I'll take the roll call. And so we have Trustee Millerick?
I vote aye.
Aye. Trustee Nell?
Aye.
Trustee Gasson? Mac? And Trustee Cooper?
Aye.
Okay, I say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's 7-0. Okay, great. Okay, on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, the Novato Unified School District Board of Trustees met in closed session to review the administrative hearing panel's recommendation on an expulsion of student 61833. Based on the review of the panel's recommendation, Trustee Cooper made the motion to expel. The student will be expelled for 1 year for the following Ed Code violation: 48915C and 3 and 48900D. Trustee Millerick, second the motion. And now I take the roll call. Trustee Millerick.
I vote aye.
Aye. Trustee Gasson? Aye. Trustee Mack? Okay. Trustee Cooper?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye.
Aye.
And aye. Okay, so that's 7-0. All right, and that's it.
Okay, that concludes our closed session announcements. Thank you. Approval of our agenda this evening. The one item that's being taken off is 13E. Staff has pulled that item, and that will come back at a future date. 13E. It's a discussion action item, the last one. So I need a motion to approve with that one. Yep.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Oh.
Not yet. We're not there yet. We're just doing the agenda.
So I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve tonight's agenda,
Okay, thank you.
I'll
with the
second.
exception of item 13E.
13E, okay.
I'll second as amended.
All right, so we have first by Trustee Cooper, a second by Trustee Nell to approve the agenda omitting item 13E. All those in favor? 7-0. Moving on to our consent agenda, and before we move on that, just to remind the people in the audience, if you'd like to speak on an item that's on the agenda or not on the agenda, please fill out a blue card. I already have some here. We'll put you in where you will be able to speak, and you'll have 3 minutes. You come right up to the podium once I call your name, and we have a timer right there for 3 minutes, and if you could just please stay within that time, that would be fabulous. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. I am pulling item 15D. There was no minutes attached on Agenda Online, so those will come back for future approval. That was 15B, and if, Trustee Gasson, you had something you wanted to pull? Yeah, I was going to ask. That was the one?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no. When you said 13, I want to make sure I had the right number. It's 15E.
15,
The,
oh, E, okay, the
E,
board
that's
policy.
why I got mixed
Okay.
up. The board policy for the high school graduation
All right.
requirements. Yes. Yes.
We have a blue card regarding item 15G, so that one will come back on discussion action. And I am recusing myself from item 15H. Yeah, it's a little crazy, this one, but,
So I will make a motion that we pass the consent agenda, not including item B, and not including item D, and not including item E, and not including item H.
we're not gonna include, D is on, it's E as in education. It's B, E, G, and H.
Okay, so correctly stated, I'm gonna move the consent agenda, not including item B, not including item E, and not including item H, 3 items total,
And G,
and G. Okay, there's the fourth one, okay.
fourth, yeah. Okay, so that's a first by Trustee Millerick. A second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor to approve the consent with those amendments, 7-0. Okay, and if we could just jump to my item, I'm just recusing myself, 15H. This is the resolution making certain determinations regarding the proposed grounds maintenance and operation building to be constructed on district property. And I've recused myself from this item from the very beginning, so
Right, because it's near your home.
it's near, yeah, within
I will
my,
move item H.
okay.
I will second item H.
First by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor to approve item 15H. Oh, not me.
No, no. Approve, disapprove, and abstain?
Yeah, abstain. Approve is 6-0, abstain is 1. God, it's just automatic, I apologize.
Not abstain, it's really recuse,
It's
right?
recuse,
Yeah.
yes, recuse. One accusal is me. All right, so that concludes that. Thank you. And,
President
Yes.
Butler, just a matter of order, the one that we're pulling for comment, we will
Yes.
address that at what?
I'm going to put it, it's the regarding district elections, so I'm going to put it when we talk about the 7 to 5 conversation. I'm going to put those back to back, kind of like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was consent. We're good to go. All right, the most important part is we have Loma Verde here this evening. We also have our Novato High Science class, but we're going to kick it off with Loma Verde.
All right.
And Principal Chima is here this evening.
Hi, good evening. I want to thank you for starting with all those expulsions. Some of them were paying attention or asking me some questions.
Got to do it.
No, not ever. My name is Tanya Chima, and I have the privilege of being the principal at Loma Verde Elementary School. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share and highlight something that's happening at Loma Verde, and it's happening actually at all elementary schools this year. When I had a conversation with the staff and said, what do we want to highlight, it was just unanimous. Something has been a buzz on our campus, and we definitely want to share and thank you for your support as well. So our students are going to be sharing about our new reading curriculum and how they are becoming readers. So without further ado, and we do have some teachers in the back there, Mr. Martin, our TK teacher, Mrs. Robertson, who's a phenomenal long-term sub, but we want to keep her forever, third grade teacher, and Mrs. Pfeiffer, our second grade teacher. And Miss Tiki Martin, who's our project coordinator, is also here to support. So I'm going to hand it off to Amir. Come on up here.
We would like to share our reflections with you about new look. We are Loma Verde and we are readers. I'm Amir and I'm in third grade. We would like to share our reflections with you about our new Lucy Calkins Readers Workshop.
I'm Grayson, and I'm in kindergarten. I like to use sound power because it helps me sound out the words so that I can read. I also like to use picture power because it helps me find out the animal's name if I am reading a book about animals. I have lots of animal books in my baggie because I like animals. I'm Melissa and I'm in third grade. A strategy that helps me is that if I don't know how to say a word like computer, I just sound it out like computer. And it makes all words easier to read. Another strategy I use is to read slower so I won't skip a word and stay interested in the book. All these strategies help me build my comprehension. I love reading because I get to read different types of stories. I'm Arhan and I'm in kindergarten. I like to use pointer power because it helps me know which words are next so I don't skip lines. I love to read because I like learning from books and sounding out words helps me learn new words.
Hi, I'm Kayden and I'm in third grade. My strategy is making a mind movie and looking at the pictures so I know what is happening in the book. If I don't know any words, I always sound them out. If you don't understand the sentence, then you ask somebody or go slow and take your time. I think reading slower is better, and you can even find interesting words. I enjoy reading because I get to learn new things and it's fun.
My name is Jeremiah, and I am in first grade. I like using picture power because I can see if my words make sense with the picture. And I can also read small parts of the words and then cross them together to make the big word like sh, ark. Put them together and you get shark.
My name's Isaac and I'm in second grade. I think last year in my old school in first grade, I thought 20 minutes of reading was a long time, and there were levels, but it was hard to read. Some of them, it was hard to read because there were alphabet animals that help us read, but I thought that wasn't enough, and we didn't switch partners. This year we have more books to read from. I feel like I am a reader. I like talking about books with my reading partners. I have learned to focus on other characters and not just the main character. That way I learn about more characters. I like that I get to share books with my partners.
I'm Martin, and I'm in 5th grade. The new reading program is better than the last one because I don't feel pressure of AR quizzes. I find it easier to know where I am with the new levels because the letters are easier to remember. I came from Sweden last year, and I have worked hard to get better at my reading. So I enjoy books a lot more this year. Because there's a wider selection.
I'm Abby and I'm in the 4th grade.
I'm Alma and I'm in 5th grade.
I like the new reading curriculum because it helps me be quieter in the classroom so I can focus more.
The change has helped me in that I am more independent this year with my reading.
Group work is also helping because I get to work with others and it helps improve teamwork and collaboration.
This year I have more growth in my reading stamina and I am able to read for more time without any distractions.
I love reading more than last year, and if I had a book with me right now, I'd be reading.
This year, there is less pressure than last year because I'm not just reading for AR points. I am reading for myself.
Hi, my name is Hi, my name is Vivian, and I am in 3rd grade. I used to not like reading because the books that I was reading in 2nd grade were not interesting. In 3rd grade, the books are super interesting and funny. I can now read books that have a lot of pages. I feel like I am a reader because I get more time to read in the classroom this year. Thank you. Hi, I'm Esteban, and I'm in the 5th grade. The new Lucy Calkins program has helped me in a lot of ways. I feel like I have become a better reader because I am reading at my level, and it's easier to find something that's in my level. And it's interesting too. It's great to have so many more books in my classroom. I like seeing my level change over the year, and I feel proud. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie and I'm in 5th grade. The new reading program is good for me because I understand my books more because they are at my level. I actually am feeling what the character is feeling instead of just rushing through the books. I have explored different types of books, even ones I would have thought I wouldn't like. I try new books and I end up liking them, and I wouldn't have known if I didn't try. I've been reading a balance of fiction and nonfiction, unlike last year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie, and I'm in second grade. This year I have become a big reader, and when I get stuck with a word, I just look at it and I start to chunk the word, and then I know the word. I use my finger to cover up part of the word. It's and sound it out and put it together. This year I'm also learning how my reading can help me to be a good writer. I know how to make better characters and writing fictional books because I read more.
Hi, my name is Cesar and I'm in second grade. Reading makes me a better writer because when I read, I know loads of words and I can basically write better. I love reading fiction books and I have a lot more to choose from this year, and that makes me have ideas on writing about fiction topics.
Hi, my name is Leighton and I'm in second grade. Reading has become my key to writing. When I read, I see a word, and when I see that word over and over again in different books, then I can memorize the word and use it in my writing. I can get lots of ideas from what I read and make stories based on those ideas. I know that I need to keep reading to become a better writer. Thank you.
So to the students, we hear all about Lucy Calkins here sitting at this table. We have a principal talk about it, or we have a teacher talk about it. We're always hearing how good it is, and maybe sometimes how it's maybe not so good sometimes, but to hear from the student is the best for us. So hearing from you and knowing that reading is important to you and this particular program is working for you is great. And so thank you for coming to share that with us. That's important to us because if you didn't like it, that would be a problem. So thank you very much. Can you guys, all the kids, come up and we'll do a picture? And your parents can take a picture of the whole group together. Good job. We're checking on the next presentation to make sure everybody's here. Yeah. All right, so our next presentation is from Novato High Science class. We have Mr. Seeley here. And Superintendent Hogaboom's going to open it up for us.
So you guys are going to get a copy of this, but Sally puts a lot of magazines and articles and stuff in my office on my in-baskets, and I kind of glanced at this, and I thought, okay, Novato Journal of Science, like I didn't really know what it was, and I'm like, wow, it looks like a pretty cool science thing, but like, why am I getting this, or whatever? And then I open it up, and I look at it, and come, lo and behold, it's articles that our students have all written, and the quality of this publication was just really amazing. So I wanted to talk to Hank and let him know how fantastic it was. We did a What's Up Wednesday out there a few weeks ago, but to ask our students for this high level of professionalism is pretty awesome. And I was just so impressed with him for creating the assignment and then culling through the articles and picking the best ones, and just the quality of the publication in general is amazing. So I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work in putting this together, and I wanted to introduce Hank, so he's going to talk a little bit about how this idea came to fruition, and then I think introduce some students. So thanks for being here.
Thanks. All right, I got a. You guys want to? Here, I can pass it. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's close. We'll share. What's the next one down there? Yeah, I had some slides too. Did those make it? Okay. The button that's more. Okay. Great. Hi, everybody. So this is a project that we did. I have some students here with me right now. They're going to talk here in just a second about their experience with this project. But the project is what I call the Novato Journal of Science. It was the first time doing this project this year. And here you can see, here's some of the cover art for it. Novato Journal of Science, Volume 1. Okay, all right. That cover art, by the way, was made by a student at Novato High School. Commissioned her to do that work. Okay, all right. So this is kind of the mission statement of the Novato Journal of Science. It's an annual publication used to showcase student achievement in science within the district. Right now, that's only Novato High School, but hopefully later on we can expand that a little bit to be within the district. Okay. It was modeled. The inspiration for this came from actual scientific journal articles. So that would be magazines like Nature or Science, places where real scientists actually put their work to communicate basically the projects that they've done to the scientific community. So it's going to be the same thing here, but it's going to be us students communicating their scientific work to the district. Okay. So the reasons why we want to do this, I want to expose students to authentic scientific practices, so doing actual research, then writing about that research and publishing it to other people for people to read. And I also want to give students, and this is probably the bigger piece right here, is just give them a chance to learn about something that they're actually passionate about. With this, I kind of opened it up so students could pick whatever they wanted to and really dig into that topic. Okay. So here's the steps. It's pretty simple. What we did is we first just formed groups based on interests. Then we contacted experts in that particular field. Some people, they got a hold of professors from MIT, for example, or business leaders. Okay. Then we had weekly presentations to build in a culture of sharing our information with each other. So it was every Friday we had 2 groups present what they found so far and teach the class. Then we ended with final presentations, a culmination of everything that they've learned. And then wrapped that up with an actual peer review session where students read each other's papers. They gave them kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle, saying, please make these revisions, and then we will publish, just like authentic scientific journals. Okay. We picked the very best ones to publish. That's my intention with this is supposed to be an achievement for students. So all these students that I have with me today, these are all students that got published. So it was very, I don't know, congrats to you. Okay. We had 82 students participate this time, 16 total were published. So I have some students right here. I want them to talk about their experience with it. I want to turn over the mic for a little bit. Okay, so first up we got Sophia and Mandy. They want to talk about their experience with the project.
Hello. Mandy and I decided to focus on medical resonance imaging, which my dad was getting a lot of MRIs, so I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, why not research about it? And I think one of my favorite parts of the project was the designing and organizing of the final paper, because I'm a very visual learner and I like organizing, and it's just, that was really fun for me. And
my favorite part was that it was a long-term project. It was assigned at the beginning of the semester, and each week we had a dedicated work day.
We learned a lot about collaboration and communication between our group, because a lot of our projects, I feel like in school, I mean, besides math class, are individual, and having to figure out how to communicate with our group to get deadlines finished was hard, but also was very rewarding in the end.
And we had to be creative when we were figuring out which subtopics we were going to use and which ones would most benefit our paper, and we had to be creative when we were organizing and designing our paper. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Milena.
Hi, my name is Hope.
And so our paper is the one on the physics of aging. And in that one, we focused on the law of entropy and gravity and the effects of aging on the skin and even plastic surgery.
My section was on plastic and cosmetic surgery. My favorite part was learning about how to contact professionals in the field and getting to work with a very passionate and hardworking group.
My favorite part of the project was finding diagrams to represent each of the sections. And one of our diagrams was a picture of Obama before and after the presidency. And then we learned that it can be really hard to contact scientists. We had a hard time getting a response. Yes. And we also learned more about how aging affects us and the factors that go into it, and how to gather information from abstracts from other research projects.
I loved how we got to choose a topic that we were interested in, because it made it so much more fun, and it was good that we had a whole semester to work and really dig deep into the topic.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace. The rest of my group isn't here, but I worked on the paper on looking at the possibilities of populating Mars. And what I loved about this project is groups were assigned based on common interest. We didn't pick our friends. Mr. Seeley set up a survey saying, what are the top 3 things you would like to write a paper on? And the 2 people that also wrote Life on Mars, were 2 people I hadn't really known very well before. So not only did we get to look into something we were really passionate about learning about, we also got to meet new friends, and now we're like really good friends. So that's cool. Additionally, the looking at being published as an accomplishment was really cool for me, because I came to school to Novato High for the MSA Acting Theater program, and physics class doesn't usually sound very interesting to someone like me, but I'm also very competitive. So wanting to be published was a huge deal for me, and so now on my resume I can put I was published in the Novato Journal of Science, and I also did all these acting things. So that was really cool and a great opportunity that I would highly encourage spreading for other people. Yeah.
Okay, so that was, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, students. This was all the students. I couldn't have been done without them, so thank you. And thank you so much for coming tonight, too. Okay. So really quickly, I can just blast through these slides. I didn't know how long to prepare for. This project, it is PBL. It was inspired by the training that all of you helped pay for. Okay, so I was looking at basically these elements of PBL. So student voice and choice, students got to pick what they studied. Authenticity, this is an inauthentic scientific journal. sustained inquiry. It's a semester-long project. Critique and revision, we go through a peer review process. And the public product, that's kind of the biggest element of it, is actually a publication. The goal is I want to get this out to parents in the community between San Marin and Novato High. I want it to be spread around so students can show off their work. Standards, it meets NGSS standards, performance practices, as well as the 6 C's also. And here are the future goals. This is my big slide to you, okay? I want to publish this once a year. This is volume 1. I want to get this project to continue next year. And I actually want it to grow. I want all of physics at Novato High to do this project. So I've talked to the other physics teachers at Novato High. They're going to be doing this project also. I also want to increase the publication rate. This year it was only 15%. I want to get that number up. Okay, so I'm hoping next year get that up to 30%. I also want to have a wider reach, so costs money to print these things. So it could be nice if I could print more than 50 copies and actually spread these out a little bit more than I did. And then finally, I want this to be more open, not just students pick their own topics and get to research them. I want to show building things, experiments. I want this to be a scientific journal, basically. Okay. So thank you. Thanks to the students, most of all. Thank you so much. I want to thank the board. And then also, I wanted to throw this in there too. The Science Survival Fund is what helped pay for this magazine to be printed. So huge thanks to that at Novato High School. Okay, and then that's it. Here's one example of where that money goes. Yes. Okay, great. And then that's it. Okay.
Wow, that was really good. Yeah. Can the students and Mr. C come up and do a photo? That'd be great. This was really good. We thoroughly enjoyed this. It's exciting, yeah. And again, the students' perspective here tonight, so it's important. All right, that was a great way to start our board meeting. Moving on to announcements. Hi, McKenna.
Hello, I'm McKenna
Yeah.
O'Neill from Novato High School. This week we started our recycling war, which is a class competition, and you try and get like all of the plastic bottles in your bin and like cans and stuff. And then I think we're gonna donate the money to an organization that we're going to donate at different for, but then we decided to donate to the Coast Guard because that happened. Anyhow, so next week we're selling prom tickets, and next year our parking lot's going to be a lot smaller, so we're collecting the parking applications this week, and we're going to have a parking auction at 3:30 May 1st in front of the old gym at Novato High School. Our spring sports are coming to an end. This week we have an interesting schedule because of the CASP testing, so I don't go to school until 10:55, which is nice, except for Friday when I do my testing. Our senior projects are being presented on the 30th of this month and the 1st from 6 to 9, and there are judges needed, so yeah.
Senior projects you just said? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Our senior projects, like the students present their senior project, and then people judge it. There's like a panel of judges.
Website or something? Is there a way to sign up?
There is.
Yeah.
There's a Google Doc form.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
could indeed send
Or
that
send
to
it
you
to
guys.
Sally and she'll
Yes.
forward it
I
to
can,
us.
I'll email it to Sally.
Perfect.
Okay.
Get
Awesome.
some of us there, so.
Thanks.
Because I know you need other people besides parents of
Yes,
this, right?
you need it can't be a Novato high school parent, so that's unfortunate for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, and they have, yeah, right. Okay, yeah,
okay.
perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm Jimena Lara from San Marin. Kindness Week is in full swing this week at San Marin. Yesterday, students were able to plant a flower for an hour of community service, so we did that in Ben's garden. Today, we had our huge barbecue and sold spring fling tickets that are sold until Friday. CASP testing is going on this week. We start at the same time, so no different schedule. Today was the boys baseball team senior day. Spring fling is this Saturday from 8 to 10. And senior prom is on May 26th at the Hyatt Regency Hotel.
Thank you. Trustee Millerk, any announcements? Okay, Trustee Nell?
Just a reminder to go to the School Fuel or Tour of Novato website and sign up to support our riders in the upcoming Tour Novato public School Fuel, our public school foundation.
And volunteer. They need volunteers, I'm sure.
And we need volunteers.
Great. Trustee Gasson?
So I just have two things that I attended. The special ed committee meeting yesterday went really well. I appreciate the coordination that they're doing and trying to reach out to the community and get some feedback and in conjunction with the report that we received recently, working on making the department flow better. Today, I actually attended Pleasant Valley's Youth Truth Survey session. I have to commend Principal Sedan. She actually pulled together two meetings or two sessions. One was this morning, one it's probably going on. It's a little later. It went on this evening to get feedback from the community, parents, teachers, and staff on how we can take the data that we received in that and make progress towards change. And again, I know that we had the model for pulling together all of the schools this year, and I really appreciated the opportunity for all the schools to get together to understand the survey a little bit more. But I'd be interested to also follow up and find out if anybody or if the schools have done anything with that information. One thing I also wanted to mention is sort of separate. It's not an event, but I've wanted to work with Leslie Benjamin on reaching out to the community and holding like public discussions or meetings where the public can come and ask questions or talk with me. So if you have any thoughts or concerns, if you can let me know or talk to Superintendent Hope about that. And I think that's it.
So you're going to meet with the community members and
just
say,
put
hey,
together,
like, I'm here at this time. You're welcome to come and
Right.
chat with me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've discussed it a little bit with management. Just want to see if there's any thoughts or concerns about that. I originally was going to do it on my own, but then Leslie's done such a great job with all of the communication staff, and I started thinking, well, maybe that would be something more district, having it more focused through the district. But either way, again, it's more just to get your guys' input or feedback if there's
Yeah,
a
I think it's
concern.
important that we just are aware of it. And if anybody has a concern, you can discuss it with Diane, or we can even talk about it with our governance handbook or something like that if it becomes a real concern. But
okay,
thank you for making us aware of it. Appreciate it. Thanks. And maybe just give us updates as you meet with people and something like that. Trustee Mack. Okay. Trustee Cooper.
A couple weeks ago, I attended the Golden Bell Committee meeting, and the good news is we have lots of nominees in the various categories. And the really good news is Superintendent Hogaboom has agreed to give our welcome speech. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. I better go then.
You're not. The other opportunity I had, I went to the Loma Verde open house, and that was a lot of fun. I learned they had it set up in the courtyard in the front of the school. Various students were giving their historical renditions or the renditions of their historical figures like Martin Luther King and Cassius Clay. I learned about him, George Washington. They all did a really fantastic job.
Trustee Gila?
Just wanted to let the people know that we have on April 25th from 6 to 8, it's called Raising Resilient Youth, a parent community event, and it's about youth substance and use prevention. It's going to be at the Marin County Office of Education, and for any information, you may contact Leslie. And then I believe it's also an email was sent out, so more information on that.
All right. I attended Pleasant Valley and Lou Sutton's open house in the last few weeks. I also getting great feedback on the parent education event that I believe was on the social media and screen time. Parents love that. So it was at Novato High. And I guess there was quite a bit of people there. I wasn't able to go, but the feedback I've gotten is it was amazing. So parents learned a lot. So that's it.
So a couple things that happened. So to tag on to what President Butler said, I really think that social media is one of the most important concerns of our time. I think it's aiding and contributing to the mental health crisis of our kids. Colin really has two messages. He spoke to the parents, and a lot of parents just don't know how to try to manage, the whole social media thing, and they basically just hand kids a cell phone at what he would say is way too early in age. They don't need this when they're that young, and it's basically opening up the world and can cause a lot of problems. He gave a lot of research about social media and how that's causing isolation and depression, and actually also links it to suicide rates that have gone skyrocketing. So that's not the only problem with it, but the education from parents I think was great. He has a great sense of humor. Then he also the next day spoke to our middle school, so all three, Hamilton, San Jose, and Sinaloa. We heard, again, like Debbie said, such great feedback. We're going to bring them back next year. We're already booking them for September to hit the high schools and probably 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So I think it's just the message that we need to hear with some guidelines of parents who don't really have a clue how to help their kids manage that. Last week I was also I do a shadow once a month with different groups. Shout out our grounds crew over at Novato High doing some weed whacking. So Tom, I got my expertise going with that, which is good. So I always learn a lot when I do that about different perspectives. So that was really helpful. This week, tomorrow is the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council members that myself and some board members are going to, but also this week, Wednesday night and Thursday night, we're having meetings with our Novato High School and San Marin community about our bond projects. So Wednesday night at 7, if you can make it, is at Novato High, and Thursday night at 7 is San Marin High. So urge you, if you can, to head to those things. And then lastly, we're doing another trip to Lindsay Unified School District, which we think is kind of a model for performance-based learning. And I think Derek Nell is going to that with our high school principals, and Chris is going, and Jen. So hopefully they do those all the time. We'll probably do more next year, but that's kind of I would say the gold standard for where we're trying to go. So thank you for going there, because it's not easy to get there. So thank you, Trustee Nell.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our discussion action items. The first item I didn't have any non-agenda public comment, so that's why I'm moving forward. 13A is Resolution 27. This is 2018-19 Certificated Teacher Appreciation Week, which is May 6th through 10th. And Deputy Superintendent Chris Koska will present that item.
Thank you, President
You're
Butler.
welcome.
It's kind of nice to be at the beginning of the agenda for once. Thank you. Thank you. Must be because I have an important topic. So, as President Butler said, May 6th through 10th is Certificated Teacher Appreciation Week. As you all know, teachers play a critical role in raising our children. They're kind-hearted, warm, caring, thoughtful people who take on the best and the worst that our children can bring with them to school every day, and we're just so appreciative of everything that they do. And so during this week, it's a celebration that recognizes the consistently high level of work performed by our district's teachers. So with that, we recommend the approval of Resolution 27, 2018, 2019.
All right. And just to add on to that, we know teachers have one of the most challenging jobs possible, but it's also very meaningful what they do. And on this board truly appreciates the work that our teachers do each and every day. And we know it's each day, 7 days a week. We know it's not a five day a week job. So thank you on behalf of the board for the work that you do. Again, it's very important what you do, and you make a difference every day in each student. And it may not feel like that sometimes, but you truly do. So All right. Okay.
Second.
Trustee Billick is a first and Trustee Aguila is a second. All those in favor? 7-0. And I think we go beyond just doing this resolution. We do the Model the Way, which is every month we're reaching out and celebrating our classified and our certificated. So, all right, moving on to 13B, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Great. So a couple weeks later, when we're even more tired and even more looking forward to summer, we come together and we celebrate the classified employees for the week of May 20th through May 24th. Again, our classified employees are very often the folks behind the scenes, making sure that our classrooms are clean, making sure that food is served, making sure that kids get the assistance that they need in the classroom. That our offices are organized and efficient, just doing all that other work, driving our kids to and from school, and keeping our grounds clean and safe, making repairs to the buildings, all those other things that sometimes we take for granted. We know that we've got good, hardworking folks out there doing that work for us every day, and we want to make sure that we appreciate them as well. So we celebrate them the week of May 20th through 24th. And so we recommend the board approve Resolution 28, 2018-19 to celebrate classified employees.
Thank you. And then just on behalf of the board, you're an integral part of who we are. Classified staff, as you said, they do just about everything and anything outside of the classroom. And they're just a valued member of the NUSD family. And we couldn't ask for anything more from them. They work really hard. Just as our teachers do, and we appreciate them each and every day. So, make a motion. Okay.
As a side, not as a side comment, as an additional comment, raising children is the job of a whole community, and in this district, the adult leadership, sometimes as a classroom teacher, but just as likely might be an administrative person at a front desk, or somebody whose job it is to keep the campus clean and tidy, but provides an adult voice when it's needed for our students to hear, and they can see people acting as adults around them, not just the classroom teacher, but the entire staff. And that, to me, is unique at Novato. And I'm thrilled to be part of this community in that regard.
Great. Thank you. I have a first by Trustee Aguila. Second?
Second.
Okay. Second by Trustee Cooper. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you, Chris. And you're on to the next one.
All right, I got three in a row. Lucky me. So the third topic that I have to share with you is around openers for our contract negotiations between NFT and the district. This is something that we do annually. We're actually bringing this a little bit later than we have in the past due to us concluding negotiations a little later this year. So this is something we're required to do by law before we begin negotiations. And this year we're proposing to negotiate on the following articles. Article 8, professional responsibility. Article 9, class size. Article 10, evaluation. Article 11, transfer. Article 16, compensation. And Article 17, benefits. Unlike other places and other unions within our own district, we bring these collaboratively together, just saying that we've mutually agreed that these are the articles we're going to negotiate. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we need a motion on this. Okay, first by Trustee Mack, a second by Trustee Aguila. Let me just remind the staff is recommending approval of the initial proposals of negotiations for the 2019-20 mutually agreed upon by NFT and NUSD. That's Novato Federation of Teachers and Novato Unified School District. All those in favor? 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, 13D. This is a discussion on changing the number of our trustees here at this board table from 7 to 5.
Thank you, President Butler. So tonight we want to kick off that discussion and really hear from each of the trustees about your thoughts on going from 7 to 5. On March 21st, the board adopted resolution number 24, 2018-19, which it began the process of establishing trustee areas and elections by district instead of at large. And that's to comply with the California Voting Rights Act, and we did it voluntarily, so we weren't served a letter and having to pay the $30,000 with a condensed timeline. The city of Novato is doing this, the city of Santa Fe City School Districts. It's really cities and school districts across the state. So this is an opportunity a lot of people have brought up over the years of why do we have 7 board members, why don't we have 5? This would be the golden opportunity, and this would be the time if we were going to make that move to do so, since we're going to be looking in trustee areas by district anyway. So on April 2nd, David Saldani, who's our legal counsel from Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rood, and Romo, presented some of the next steps. So tonight would just be a first initial conversation to kind of hear from each of you about what you think about that. We have tonight also on the board agenda on consent is an item to which I guess you already approved, to hire a demographer, which we suggested was cooperative strategies for demographic services. So they will attend the next 2 board meetings on the 7th and the 21st. They'll talk a little bit about the criteria that they will use to draw the maps, but they'll also be here to hear input from the public about any thoughts the public has about that. But obviously the first decision before they go off this summer and draw up different maps in different ways for the community to consider is we need to know, are we going to divide them up into 5 trustee areas or 7 trustee areas? So tonight I thought would be a good opportunity for the board to weigh in on, thank you, on that topic, just with some initial thoughts about what you see as the pros and cons, and then we'll continue this discussion on the 7th. If you're ready to make a decision on that on the 7th, we can go ahead. Otherwise, we can wait till the 21st. I think it'd be interesting to hear what the demographers say. I think the sooner we can decide whether it's 7 or 5, then we kind of know which way we're going with that, which would be helpful. So with that, I will turn it over to the board to hopefully hear from everybody about some thoughts about the pros and cons of going from 7 trustees to 5.
All right, back to us, board. Anybody want to start with where they think they? We do have a public comment. He walked out though, Zach. Zach, if you're here, come back. Okay, yeah, we'll come back. We're gonna do, Alan, your item, we pull the demographer contract because your item is more related to that. So when we finish this item, I'm gonna go to that item, and that's where you'll plug you in to speak, okay? All right, back to the board. Where does everybody, Trustee Nell? Okay, well, so if we want to go down the line, that's a little bit easier. Trustee Miller.
Historically, I have held that we're better off with a 7-member board. And I do that on 2 accounts. One is I look at the success of this Novato Unified School District in relationship to other districts in Marin County that are 5-member boards, or in the bottom half of Sonoma County, the southern half of Sonoma County. I don't know north of Santa Rosa very well. And we have a reputation of being stable. We have a reputation of being fiscally conservative. We have a reputation of being a good place to work. We have a reputation of fiscal responsibility. All of those come from a 7-member board instead of a 5-member board. And what's our primary job? Well, I mean, one of our biggest jobs is hiring the superintendent, and I can argue that we've been middling on that task year over year over the last couple of decades. I can find some cases where we did really well, and I can find some cases where not so well. But the mitigating, the discussion that forces us through by having a 7-member board, I think, is directly connectable to the quality of the workplace that we hold and the quality of education that we hold. So I'm in the if it isn't broke, don't fix it kind of model, and I think we look better there. We can start naming other districts where there's smaller boards, where there's been more radical shifts. They've been in the headlines more often than not, and I think being in the headlines isn't always, it can be a terrible thing. So I'm in the if it's not broke, don't fix it model. I think this is the right time to have the conversation. I voted to move this forward for conversation, so I'm at this point open to all kinds of discussion. But just as a starter, I guess let's convince me it's better to change. I'm not sure our 5-member city council is a better model than our 7-member school board. So anyhow, I'm kind of happy with what we got, I guess, and
Okay.
I mean, it's not that I agree with any one of you particularly on any issue. It's just I think that dialogue is valuable.
Trustee Now.
Well, just to start, I think that it would be, diligent for us to take a look at this based on the circumstances of our creation of independent election districts. I think we should not let this opportunity go by without analyzing it and talking it over. I've always felt that I don't necessarily disagree with Trustee Milrick at all on the benefits of more voices. This is one of those things where either way has positive effects. But I think we'd be more efficient and more effective. And when I say we, I mean the community. Speaking, a smaller board is not just going to have a smaller budget, but I think they're going to have the ability to do things quicker. They'll probably delve deeper into issues. Maybe at times would be a benefit. So I've always been of the mind that it would be beneficial to the community if we were to reduce the board to 5. Having it be sort of a 50-50 proposition as far as positive and negatives, I think we should do it at an opportune time, and I think that opportune time is upon us. And so I'm willing to hear more and talk a little bit more about it, but I think a 5-member board would be a more efficient, more effective board.
Thanks. Trustee Gasson.
So I think I probably would have had a different opinion when I was on the other side than I do now. Obviously, the news person here, my husband and I were talking about today, because I'm like, well, what do you think? And collectively, we were discussing that. I mean, for me, and I know that I'm new, but given that we're going to be in district elections and there could be some change up in the board in general because of the way the future elections will be held, I like the ability to be able to talk to more than one person and having a little bit more ability to get an understanding of what things are going on, get the input, because it's really restrictive to learn everything and to get all this knowledge and information and figure out what is the best thing for the district without having dialogue beyond these meetings. So one downside to the 5 members, you've only got one other person you can communicate with. I think the bigger question, or a lot of people's presumptions from what I hear in the public, is that we're costing, the extra 2 people cost the district a lot of money. So my question would be, as I understand it, our budget has been cut. We don't have I don't think we have a budget anymore outside of the money that is for our stipend and for benefits, should we decide to take those. So if there's others, I'd be interested what that dollar amount is, I think it would be, it didn't have to be right now.
No, I think they're prepared. We knew this question would come up.
The approximate cost of benefits is approximately $10,000 per member, depending on. That's just the average. So depending on which, some are single plan, some are family plan, et cetera. And then the board still does have a budget, although it has been cut back considerably going forward as part of the budget cuts that were approved for 2019-20.
We pay for some membership fees and stuff for CSBA
and the filming
online,
of these and
filming
agenda
of these
online.
meetings. Yeah, our legal costs, if we have any legal costs.
But almost no discretionary budget left.
The filming cost is the same there if it's 5 or 7. Yeah.
Exactly, right. But we still have more outside of compensation. There is a small board budget.
It's the incremental cost thing.
So we get the $200 a month. So it would probably be safe to say each board member maybe costs $15,000 more.
Probably around there, probably a little bit less, but yeah.
Okay, just for point of reference. I mean, because I'm always about the money too. But part of the dialogue that I've had, I mean, I actually, most of the people I talk to support a 5-member board. Again, I think that I probably would have done the same. I just like having the more power and input. I think we, as I sit here each time, I'm impressed by how much each member brings that's separate and different perspective. So I appreciate that. And also just, I feel fortunate that I don't have, I don't work. So I also, have the ability to do a lot of things. But, I'm already seeing there's a lot of different meetings and things that we, having board members attend is a positive thing for our community. So the more people we have, the more ability we have to be able to attend those types of things and be involved in the community. I think there's a little bit of impression that we don't want to go to things. And I don't think that's because we don't want to. I just think that it's restrictive of time too. Yeah. So the more people we have, the more we're able to be out in the community. So I can go either way. Again, my friends and community seems to be a 5-person. I like 7 just for my own ability, and I think just making it us more successful.
Trustee Mack?
So much like you, I mean, I used to be the new guy, but not the new guy anymore. But yeah, but prior to joining the board as well, I was very much thinking 5 was a no-brainer. It just seemed it was more efficient. I thought meetings ran too long. There's too much, just too much going on, too much talking. As well, just as Trustee Mel pointed out, it's more efficient. And then there's a cost side of it all. However, since being on the board, learning all about the Brown Act, and the Brown Act is a very real constraint here for all of us, and we know that. There's a real value and those who are listening who don't understand what I'm talking about, in the Brown Act, we cannot communicate outside of board meetings with anybody more than the majority of the board, I guess the best way to put it. So for instance, when you have a 7-member board, I can talk to 2 people. When you have a 5-member board, I can only talk to 1 person. There's a lot to be said for being able to talk to 2 people. I really do value that ability. And you guys know I do that. And I selectively, figure out who to talk to, and it helps a great deal. I would also go along with Trustee Millerick in saying that there's a lot to be said for the stability of a 7-member board. There's a real breadth, and we know it, of opinions on this board. And for us to come together as often as we do with a 7-0 vote, it's thought out. We get through it all. We all bring different things to the table. And I think the challenge if you have 4, boy, you look across town and it just scares me. Just because if you just have 2 people that are kind of outside the mainstream, and that's just one person can throw it all into a tailspin. And when you have 7, it's less likely. It's a lot more stable. And so, to be honest, I'm leaning towards 7 now. However, like Trustee Nell said, and Trustee Gasson, I'm open to hearing about it. And I'll close with this. To be honest, if we did go to 5, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with if I'm out of it because of it. That's not the reason why I'm saying this. I do think, though, that 7 is just more stable.
Thank you. Trustee Cooper?
So I think the little history is in order as well. I was trying to ask Trustee Miller this afternoon, how did we ever end up with 7? And it took place many, many, many years ago when the 3 district, Black Point, San Jose and Novato all merged, became a unified district, and I think there was a sense that, 5 people can't really represent all 3 of those districts, whatever it was. But nonetheless, that's just a little bit of interesting information. Personally, I think there's a benefit. I've always been, I've understood the concept and the thought that, maybe we should, for maybe some cost savings, or, if we were having issues internally as a board deciding things, that a 5-member board would be a better thing. I really think that I've come to realize I like a 7-member board. I like the fact that we can discuss. We have many different ideas. And we do seem to, it's not as if we're here till midnight. Granted, we're here till 10:30, 11 sometimes, but it gets drawn out at times. But then the flip side of that, and now is the good time to be discussing this, but the flip side is the cost, and there's the election cost as well. So the more people we have on the board. It's a slightly, I don't know what that cost is exactly, but I'm sure Yancey could tell us, but that's an additional cost too. So there's the cost versus all the other things. I think, so bottom line, I'm glad we're talking about it, and look forward to having a little more discussion. And I'm kind of...
Any comment on the election cost?
If we go from 7 to 5?
The biggest change actually in election cost was us moving, the district choosing to move to even year elections, which significantly decreased the cost of election. Moving to district elections will further reduce that, and then there'd be a small incremental difference of going from, because you'd have usually 4 or 3 seats up, and so that would be 4/7 or 3/7 of the community to pay for. But those election costs have actually significantly decreased since when we were on the odd year schedule.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Gila?
I'm really more, I really appreciate what Trustee Miller mentioned. I'm more in favor of that. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I understand there's a cost savings, and so that's something to look at too. And I think this is the right time to say it. I think Trustee Mack said it perfectly. I don't think I can add any more to that. Brown Act is really I've been asked about something, and I've also asked other board members. So it goes both ways, and I think it's really helpful with some of the difficult decisions that we've made. And as I look around, I see every single one brings something to the table, and we're all so different. And I think that's what makes us unique. And I'm very proud of what we've done. And yes, we have challenges, but I think there's something to say with 2 heads is better than 1, and in this case 7. So I'm leaning more towards 7. But again, I'm open to talking about it now because the dialogue is valuable. This is the right time.
All right. I agree with many of the things everybody said here. I have always leaned towards a 5-member board. Back in 2012, we had a community member try to push a petition through to try to change it, and it never went anywhere because they didn't have the right signatures, and so and so and so and so. But I've always felt, I just think it's efficiency-wise for staff, for anybody who, I just think there's just more efficiency there, a little bit more effectiveness. We're effective as a 7-member board. I love, being on this board, and I think we have a great team right here. But I see some efficiencies with a 5-member board. What concerns me the most, though, is when we draw these almost say boundaries, but areas, trustee areas, and we draw 7 areas, I don't want each of us with just an elementary school. Already, I don't like doing this at all. I wish we didn't have to do this because I see a competition or something could really change. We're good, and I see us operating great, but you get other people on this board who might say, you know what, I'm just going to go for my little school and I don't care about anything else, and not advocate for every student in this district. And when you have 7 areas, to me, it just wreaks havoc with some of that for the future of this district. So that's my one big concern is I would rather see 5 areas and have, somebody might have just an elementary, but then somebody might have a middle and an elementary. You could really work with it, I think, a little bit better and spread the wealth a little bit better, where there's better distribution of the areas. And I know you're not drawing, and we don't want to, and I don't want to draw boundaries based on where I live, where you live. That's not, if I'm not on this board, I'm not on, we got to do what's right for this district and this community. So that's my big concern. And again, I'm fine with the 5-member board, but I could be persuaded to 7. Yes, Trustee Miller.
This is a little bit different thought. Something that just happened 2 days ago. We had the president of the Board of Trustees of the college that I work for come and talk to us about their model. And it's a not-for-profit, private institution. It's downtown San Francisco. It's been there 120 years or so. And the rule, it's a private school, so they have different rules, and they have a different purpose for the board, and I think they're both interesting. So the first rule is, if you want to be on the Board of Trustees, it's the board leads a program for generating funds for the school, like Marin Catholic or any private school in Marin County. And so the deal is you have to sign up for $5,000 a year donation to the university in order to be on the board. Well, it turns out they're relaxing that requirement because the problem is that moved them towards a very senior population, people later in their career, not people younger, and the curriculum they need to deliver needs to be driven around younger interests and views. And so they have a program they've put in place to accommodate a certain number of trustees who are not required, who don't contribute by that rule, but contribute some other different way because they need a younger population. The other thing they did is they're sitting, I think it's at 12 trustees, and they want to be at 18 to 20. But it's a different model. The bigger the board, the broader that conversation, the more it's good for community outreach, but the more responsibility it puts on the superintendent to manage up and coordinate. So a bigger board in some way makes a stronger superintendent. A smaller board makes a weaker superintendent. So, if I was going to go to work, if I was the superintendent, wanted to work for a 5-member board, I would think differently about it than working for a 7-member board, because the dynamics are different. So one of the advantages of Novato is we're at 7, not 20. We wouldn't want to go to 20. I think the economics don't work in this public model and the election model. But there's reasons, there's ways to run a board that are based on a very large board and they're successful. And in the place I'm working is like that. So, and this board in some ways does that. On, the Novato event coming the May 4th school fuel run, every one of us is going to be at a booth or doing cleanup. I mean, we're expected to contribute, and every one of us does contribute in some ways beyond sitting behind this table. We're out and doing a labor force. So we're partly that kind of board. We're partly in the community, participatory, bringing resources back to the school. So I'm not sure making us smaller turns us into a more efficient board, because all you're looking at is something that happens in this room, and we can do this more efficiently. But the outreach to the community is better served by a bigger board. Witness my place of employment is trying to get to 20, because at 12 it's not working. So
I'm also, for me, I'm looking
view.
at the size of our district too. We're not very big, and so 5 just seems more logical to me. And
my school exists in one city block.
yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty.
Who was next? Trustee Mack and then Trustee Gasson.
Ross brings up a good point. I hadn't even considered it, but
Don't agree with Ross.
no, this is a good point, though, in that there's a challenge in our district to close the equity gap. Part of making that happen is having better representation amongst our board, among people who are affected by that. And I think it's safe to say maybe some of us, but generally speaking, this board isn't necessarily affected by that. And I think, to Ross's point, having a broader board does help us bring that in, because it reduces the barrier to get on this board. It makes it easier to get on this board if we have more people. Now, I know this is crazy, but I'm just throwing it out there. And you're bringing up a great point, Debbie, about having one person representing one school. We don't want that. I agree. So I'm kind of going both directions here. Mm-hmm. What if we did 9 with 3 districts? Anyway, just throwing it out there, doing some math.
No, I think
because then we can get, but then you have 3 people from each of those districts, and you get a lot better representation. Anyway, I know
just being creative.
No, I appreciate that, gosh. Trustee Gasson, and then I have a public comment.
So I've forgotten to mention, and it goes along with what you're saying, President Butler, that Kayden here was here to mention
Yeah.
about the 5-member and the size, and which is actually where I thought you were going. One of the things and I don't expect Nancy can pull this out, you know, there's 5 city council members that they're breaking up in about 10,000 people, whatever.
Right. Population.
So the idea, the concept that you have is that, you know, you get to be where you have just, not just a school issue, but you have the size of the people that you represent is small because we have more people. My question indirectly would be, and I look forward to hearing how many more people we serve because we include county. There's a lot of county space. In fact, there's that little spot that you live in I didn't even know about. So I'm interested to see how many more people as we look as a district that we cover versus just the city of Novato. Maybe it's not another 20,000. Is it another 5?
Yeah, it's some, but it's more sparsely populated, except for the neighborhood he lives in, which I don't know. Yeah,
Then you
that's
got Black Point, you got Valley.
Indian Valley, yeah.
The demographer can provide all of that.
Yeah, we'll have a distinction.
Well, okay, whatever that number, I mean, that will help too, because she has a point. If we get down to where we're each representing 6,000 people, I think that's a consideration. So I would like to hear about that number.
All right, I'm going to move, oh, yeah,
Oh, I
Trustee
was
Nell.
not-
I don't have the city numbers, but based on roughly 62,000 in our district, that'd be 12,400, 500 if we were a 5-member board, and it'd be around 8,800 if we were a 7-member board, would be the number of constituents we would have in each district.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
information.
thank you for that. I didn't really know what the number was, so. All right, our blue card, I have Zach. Hi, Zach. Come up to the mic before you say any more, so we can. And just a reminder, we do have the 3-minute limit. Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to filibuster, don't worry. So I just want to echo the comments that most of the board members, should I pull this up, have made, that this, in my opinion, this debate really comes down to dialogue and debate versus efficiency. And so, and I do concede that a 5-member board, when it comes to discussing issues, would be more efficient because you would have 2 fewer perspectives to consider, 2 fewer hands sticking up into the air, 2 fewer voices trying to pull items from the agenda, make motions. It would make the board meeting process go faster. But let's stop there and consider the costs. 2 fewer perspectives, that's 2 fewer voices representing people. That's 2 fewer neighborhoods that won't have, 2 specific communities rather, that won't have a board member that would be looking out for their students. Yes, there are fears that it might make people more prone towards representing a particular school, yes, and those are very real concerns. But it also allows individual communities, such as our downtown community, to have an impact on shaping the board as opposed to the entire city. It allows more socioeconomically disadvantaged communities to have more of a say as opposed to being drowned out by the wealthier areas in Belmar and Keys, Hamilton, and way the heck out past like Pleasant Valley. I don't know that neighborhood name, forgive me. The board is designed to be deliberative. It is supposed to consider these different perspectives. And so I fear that shrinking the board down to 5 would eliminate 2 of those valuable perspectives. I mean, look around. None of you have the same exact perspective. Some of you might think that the lights are a terrible idea and are a waste of taxpayer money. Some of you might think that it's the best idea to keep kids in schools. Personally, I lean towards the other way, but the second way, but we can disagree. And that is the point of a board, to disagree. If we sacrifice our deliberation for efficiency, I fear that we'll move in the exact way that Trustee Miller described. An efficient board, yes, but one that is unstable, too rash in their decision making, and ultimately harms its students as a whole. And that is the goal of this board and this district, to serve its students. Now, More people can also provide more representation and it would allow more individual discussions with constituents, because instead of representing 13,000 people, you'd be representing 9,000. It allows for more direct connection. There's a reason why we don't have 5 members of the House of Representatives. We have 435. We don't have 5 senators. We have 100, so that we can represent these constituencies. Now, I'd like to end with somebody I oftentimes disagree with, Senator Tom Cotton, who said that we can either do it fast or we can do it right. Keeping dialogue open, keeping a 7-member board helps us do things right. Thank you.
Nicely done.
I like the way you used 3 minutes, just exact. What are you running? Yes, 8 blocks of the city hall here. No, I'd just like to thank Zach and had the opportunity to sit in on his econ class, and he is going a long way, and he will probably be a fantastic political consultant one of these days. And maybe we'll be able to hire him for something. So I really appreciate your perspective and how thoughtful you are. And there's pros and cons to both of those. So it's really, and I think hearing the demographer next week who's going to come kind of weigh in on the pros and cons, but I think you've already nailed it. It's efficiencies versus kind of deliberation. And I've only worked with a 7-member board, so I don't know what a 5-member board looks like. And people will say, oh, God, you have to deal with 7 members. But to be honest, what you said, Trustee Milker, is correct. It's when there's more people, I think everybody understands that as a superintendent, you can't meet with everybody every day, every week, or whatever. And I think it does make for a lot more stability. This has been the best board that I've ever worked with, which I've said many, many times. And if there is some kind of strange outlier, which does happen sometimes, if there's a 7-member board, it's a lot easier to have one strange, maybe member on there and not have it affect the stability of the board than if there's only 5 members. And you look at the Novato City Council when everything's a 3-2 this, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. It makes it harder to do things. So, I just think all the key points have been made. I think listening to the public and listening to what the demographer might have to say about it in terms of how the districts are designed, I think that's important. And the only other thing I would say is what Trustee Butler said is that you don't want, and that's the danger of the district elections is, oh no, I only represent Loma Verde. No, I only represent Pleasant Valley and that's my school. And instead of looking out for the whole district, you just look out for that. But there's probably ways to design that it's not just one school, one representative either. So that's kind of another question we can ask our demographer.
Yeah, but I also don't want a map that's zigzagging around. Yes.
Another crazy idea, staying with 7. Let's say we stay with 7.
Yeah.
I totally understand your concern of each of us representing our individual school, because I think no matter what you end up, you'd fall into that. It'd be very hard to avoid. Maybe we look at having 3 districts, 2 reps each, and then one at large who runs for president.
We can't have any at large, I don't think.
Or one who runs for president.
We asked the
I
consultant, and I think he said that is not allowed by the law.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a legal question, I think.
I just think, because I'm trying to find ways to get around what you're talking about.
I was trying to do the same thing. My suggestion was.
There's math in here somewhere. Yeah. So.
All right, can we move forward on this?
Yeah. A couple of points. I think each of us needs to go back over the next week or so and think about the votes that were tough for this board, ones that maybe we still disagree. I voted to sell the San Carlos property. It was a 4-3 vote. I still can't have a completely comfortable conversation with the people that participated in that vote. Was that the right vote or the wrong vote? I don't know. But did we do enough deliberation? I think the question is, if you look at those tough votes that we've had to take, how did this community do? So I would look at, how did we do on parcel taxes? How did we do on bond measures? How did we do on reductions of force? How did we do on cost reduction that Yancey's brought forward and we've had to deal with? There's been some very hard decisions this board has had to make that are critical to the survival of this district. And just think about them. I don't know what I think, what I even think, so let alone what you think, but I think it's something we got a couple of weeks to kind of noodle on and think through how it would play if it was a different setting. And
It'll, Trustee Nell, did you have one more thing or no? Okay, so I think we'll bring, what I'm interested in with the demographer is the size of our community and putting 7, based on his experience. This company has obviously worked with many different school districts. The size of us and 7 members, is it doable or not? I need that perspective, and I totally understand the value of the 7 right here. I get that, but is it good enough to have 7 areas with the size of our community? So.
President, but there was something I did want to clarify. The numbers I gave were registered voters.
Right, okay.
So it's possible that those numbers will be higher because there'll be many who are obviously not too young or whatever. So my number was registered voters.
All right, so we will have we haven't approved that, that's next is the demographer contract because I pulled that off consent. But this will come back on the 7th, I believe, right? Yeah, 7th, okay. All right, thank you, board members, for that and that conversation. Let's move on to, I'm going to squeeze in this consent item, 15G, approve agreement with Cooperative Strategies for Demographic Services. Gosh. Demographic, thank you, wow. Yancy or Jim, either one of you, do you want to do a quick little presentation or just opening this item, 15G, the demographer? Yeah, and then I have a public comment.
Sorry.
Yeah, I did.
All right. So this item is to approve the agreement with Cooperative Strategies for demographic services related to the districting that we will be embarking on. Obviously, one of the key factors in working with this is the demographic work that these groups will do in breaking our district into either 5 or 7 different districts and really helping guide us through the process of doing that. Through that, we received proposals from the 2 largest groups that have worked in this. One of them was the one the city's been working with, as well as Cooperative Strategies. We chose Cooperative Strategies due to the cost. They were a little bit more inexpensive, as well as their extensive work with other school districts. They had worked with many more school districts. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions.
Great. I'm going to go to our blue card. Alan Harris.
Thanks very much, Madam President and members of the board. I hope this is the right night to speak now.
This is perfect. You got it.
Thanks to Yancey's department and his outstanding Special Assistant Ashley Albertson. All of you should have a full copy of the 4 draft districts, the green, purple, orange and yellow plans that are being reviewed as we speak in the City Council chambers. The city will adopt the district delineation on the 21st of May. The maps were first released on the 9th of April. They're contiguous and they're consisting of complete census tracts with a total population of 51,904. That's based on the 2010 census. In that total population, there's only 31,000 registered voters. So, Derek, I think 62,000 is a little more than the actual number of registered voters in the Novato Unified boundary. My guess total population is somewhere in the 60 to 75,000 range for your territory, but I don't know exactly what it is. The 5 districts for the city are going to be plus or minus about around 5%. And along with each map, there's a delineation of the population characteristics. While there is no ethnic group or groups of ethnic minorities that would constitute immediate capability of changing an election outcome. In one of the iterations of the city's maps, there is a district that might have that possibility. I call your attention to the green and the orange maps. They follow Highway 101 as the boundary area to delineate District 5, which is generally on the eastern side of the freeway, from the remaining 4 districts. One last comment with a second to go. The most difficult job for the school district, in my estimation, after you go to district for selection trustees, is to get good candidates from each of the districts to run. In the past, even with citywide elections, it was difficult on occasion when education was not quite in favor, or the school district's reputation wasn't as good, to get the kind of solid citizen, sleeves rolled up participation that Jim's been able to appreciate as a superintendent during his tenure. Good question for the demographer or for legal counsel is going to be, if someone resigns from a district on the board, is the board's appointment authority going to be limited to citizens who live in that district or not? Anyway, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Alan, very much. Come back on the 7th. We'll continue the conversation. All right, so this is approval of the demographer contract services.
I so move.
Okay. So I have a first by trustee Millerick.
A second.
A second by trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you, board. Okay, getting us back on track, just a reminder that staff pooled item 13E. So moving into our staff, actually, no, I have one more item, the board policy for discussion action. Trustee Gasson pulled that. So before we move on to staff reports, let's finish this one up. This was 15E. 15E. It's Amy's here, or Jen, is Jen gonna? Oh, Jen, there you are.
Actually, I think, if you want, but it was just a small little correction, and
we got a copy, right?
There was another. So, do you want to tell them, or do you? I was just going to make the suggestion that I can't find the actual policy now. We're moving so fast.
It's in your pile there, that revision.
So the change, there was a little correction. Well, since you're here, go ahead.
Okay. So as you can see in the board cover tonight, our goal in putting this before you was we need to change the wording that wasn't accurately updated in our NGSS science update. As you noticed, the board has already approved the change from 2 to 3 years of science requirement. What didn't get changed was the wording around life and physical sciences to accurately update the board policy to reflect the state requirements of NGSS, which actually includes more than just those 2. So tonight's intent was simply to update the science portion of this to meet the needs of what our original intent was. In doing so, Diane was actually noticed another place. They're in the visual performing arts, and I actually noticed in English that there are actually inaccuracies on the state side requirements. I want to go back into some different agendas and identify when those were updated last and whether or not the intent of those changes, because that is not what they used to say, was to reflect the UCCSU requirements.
Okay.
Or if we want to stay with the state requirements, then we do need to change those back to what the state requirements actually are. So in talking with Trustee Gasson, we would like to move forward with the science updates so that we can ensure that that happens for our freshmen that are currently enrolled, and bring it back with an update for all of the other content areas to ensure that the top part of that board policy is in alignment with the bottom portion for NUSD.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you. Everybody good with that, or do you need any more clarification? Okay, so this is moving this policy, and then it'll come back, but for right now, it's approval of 6146.1. Diane, do you want to move that? Okay, so Trustee Gasson is a first. Second, anybody? Trustee Mack is a second. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you, Jen. On to our staff reports. This is the differentiated assistance report. And Amy Carter will be presenting this. We're moving right along and kind of staying on time. We're about 15 minutes off, but.
All right, I'm so excited to be able to give voice to some of the extraordinary work that's been taking place in differentiated assistance. Let's see, got a clicker for me? Just as a reminder, I was here in January, just letting you know that Novato Unified had qualified for differentiated assistance. The ed code around this is that you qualify if more than one pupil subgroup qualifies in 2 areas. For Novato, we did qualify. We qualified in the area of student engagement. Popping back to our dashboard, you can see we had 2 subgroups that ended up in that red category. So this is the area that they watch for in the state to highlight. I'd just like to point out, when we look at that chronic absenteeism, we don't have a single subgroup in green or blue. So in our differentiated assistance meetings, we did focused highly on that targeted group, but we're also aware that there's a larger system problem and that we were hoping to impact in those discussions. Those 2 areas in red, if you break that down, were our African American students and our homeless students who, for chronic absenteeism, saw an increase of roughly 5% in both of those subgroups. So that was an area of focus for our differentiated assistance team. And again, I mentioned you have to have an at-risk group in 2 of the areas. The second area was for suspension, and you see us there with red for 2 subgroups. You can see that there's a wider gap there, and that was something that our differentiated assistance team also explored. So the 2 subgroups which popped up there were African Americans, so that is how we qualified, is for African American students. We're both in the red for both of those, and our foster youth. Our foster youth had a suspension rate increase, as did our African American students. And we also, in our conversations, looked at just to the right of the red, and we had orange subgroups, and these are the 6 groups that qualified that are very close. If we don't push them forward next year, we'll be seeing them in the red area as well. So the English learners, Hispanics, 2 or more races, socioeconomic disadvantage, students with disabilities, and our white students were all areas of discussion for our group. The suspension rate trend is not what we had hoped for, particularly in this climate where we understand that keeping kids at school in their home environment is the best place for them, that sending them home to play Fortnite is not particularly beneficial. So we're seeing that rise at a time where our really best practices is to step away from that action. So that's an area that our team focused on. The purpose of differentiated assistance is to really identify the root causes, so not go directly to solutions with these things, to understand and analyze district data, and to develop guiding questions that focus our work. And then we summarize the findings and bring that to the LCAP team, where they will incorporate the plan from the differentiated assistance team. So really the mindset here is that system thinking lens. What's under the iceberg? Sure, we have truancy issues and we have suspension issues for African American students, but let's dig under that. Let's see what's happening there. Let's look for patterns. Let's look for things that are happening within our structure, in our system structures that are leading to this. Let's even look at mental models. To remind you, this is something that we interfaced with MCOE around. That's the mandate and differentiated assistance. And so we received a lot of support from MCOE in this endeavor. I brought this slide before you last time just to kind of preview, but we're looking at 6 meetings that culminate. You see we're right there in April. So we've been working on this from December and really focused on understanding the problem and the system that is producing it. All right, so the driving questions that we developed in conjunction with Marin County Office of Ed was basically, why are we suspending African American and foster youth kids more than others? Why are African American homeless kids not coming to school? Those were our 2 driving questions, and in every meeting, that was what we were striving to answer. We answered this first by asking them. And so a couple of the quotes that we really pulled out that we found significant, the education services team went out and conducted interviews, converted those to transcripts so that are redacted of any identifying information, and we sat and studied those. This is my all-time favorite quote. If my teacher isn't down for me, I won't be down for them. So that was really how a student, described for us what they felt was contributing to the problem. We heard kids tell us that sometimes they're just really stressed at school and that becomes a stressful environment, and so they choose to step away and take a day off. We heard that perhaps there was some implicit racial bias. Some of the kids we interviewed talked about maybe gender bias with the dress code or racial bias. So that was really telling and led to some great conversations for our team. To just kind of step back, our differentiated assistance team was pulled together with representatives from every stakeholder imaginable. Director Larson said, you couldn't create a team like this if you tried. We really had the voices of parents, certificated staff, principals, teachers, such a rich diversity of voices in there, and we were all examining the same thing, and it was just a dynamic team, and we're really grateful for their work. So in looking at those empathy interviews, we really landed on the fact that students need to feel engaged and included in their school. We found also in talking to principals that in our interviews that there are some misconceptions about the impact of proactive and restorative practices, that a lot of times our administrators find themselves in a place where people who aren't educated on modern thinking around these topics, we're saying suspend, punish, suspend. And that was difficult for them to feel like they needed to serve that requirement and that request while also serving what the state of California and modern thinking on this is. So we do understand that there's a need to really educate our entire system, parents and educators around restorative practices and why they are considered proactive and a better approach than the alienating step of suspension. That's not to say there aren't times when suspension is appropriate. That's absolutely true. There are some mandatory things when having the child off campus is appropriate, but there are more and more we're striving for a more inclusive, restorative mindset. And an important trend that we found from parents, from students, from staff is that the importance of maintaining those relationships and making sure that we have socio-emotional learning strategies that extend all the way through high school. We think about those a lot for elementary school, but it was very clear to us that we also need to make sure that we spend time in middle school and high school teaching kids how to resolve conflict and how to be contributors to the community at large. That's a little redundant. Okay, so we worked and worked and worked for multiple meetings, and we finally got to a point where we came to the root cause. We broke into 3 separate groups, all looking at different elements of data. We read the youth truth data, we looked at the dashboard data, our transcripts, our interviews, all the data that we had pulled together. And each of the 3 teams came back and said one thing. And every single group said one thing. So that really was validating for us that we have found that root cause element that we need to be focused on as a system. And that was that relationships were at the root. Students need a sense of belonging and emotional connection to school. Students need to feel safe and cared about. And students need to believe that their voices matter. And students and teachers need to build trusting relationships with each other. So that was a really exciting moment for all of us, and everyone in the room felt like we'd landed on that core element. And so now it's time to build out from that finding. We wrote different if-then statements that are on your board agenda, but basically, you know, if we created a school-wide shared responsibility where we are culturally responsive, we're proactive with individualized approach, promoting positive behavior for each student, making sure that we have the MTSS, the multiple tiered systems of support available with increasing levels of supports and interventions when students need them, then this problem that we're faced with will be resolved. So those were some statements we really felt strongly about as a team, and we're going to be bringing those back to the LCAP committee. So this team just really went for it. I think the MCOE team was kind of surprised by the passion and verve that were in the room, but they set an ambitious goal for all of us, and that is to reduce the chronic absentee rate of these at-risk groups by 35%. You know, we could have gone for 5% and tipped us out of the red into the orange, but this team really felt strongly about this work and wanted to plant their flag in a way that advanced the system. So we have a goal we're going to take back to the LCAP team, 35%. And then for the suspensions, they went even further and said we can cut the current suspensions in half for these at-risk groups. So that's ambitious, and I think we're going to be able to do it, actually, because when you break it down, we had a couple little data people in the room, and they said, basically, you know, we've got to do 8 less African-American students having 6 or more absences, and we've hit that, and they feel strongly that we can do that. We've got some plans in place. Suspensions for the African-American students, we have to take them from 21 down to 11. Again, they feel like that's really attainable goals, and they're very unified around that. This is a very busy graphic, but you've got it in your packet. It's really the culmination of our work. In the left-hand column, you'll see the AIM statement, and that's those 2 goals I went over. The primary drivers are really the elements that the differentiated assistance team felt like would contribute to success. The secondary drivers are the how, social emotional learning, culturally responsive practices, restorative practices, so on and so forth. And the big change ideas, and hopefully you as a school board are starting to see some themes here. Number 1, culture of caring. Number 2, multitude systems of support. Number 3, proficiency-based education. So those were the 3 elements that this team felt like were going to be the game changers for our system. And they're going to be bringing their findings back to the LCAP committee. What's interesting about differentiated assistance is that they don't create an isolated plan that now goes and exists to address this. It comes back to the LCAP process. And so this improvement plan and what they're feeling like is important for us to do to make these incremental shifts as a system will be presented to the LCAP team in our final meeting, which is taking place 2 weeks from now, I think. All right, any questions? Yes.
Yes.
So just before we have questions, I really want to thank Amy and Jen because they've been the A team all the way through. When we first heard we qualified for county assistance, there was a little bit of eye rolling, I must admit, at least on my part. Oh, great, we get to work with the county on one more thing. And but I really think that Eileen Smith and the team that the county had was amazing. They put us through it was an intense process. It was a rigorous process. And again, we're like, oh God, great, let's work with the county team. But they were very receptive. They were very open. I think we're probably, we admit our mistakes. When we do well, we say we do well. When we don't, and I think kudos to you guys for being open to that. So that's the first thing. And the second thing was really, I think the process reiterated a lot what we already knew. Last year in LCAP, we did one of the same activities they did, which is the 5 why activity. So you say, okay, you try, which tries to get to the root cause. So why are kids, African-American kids, not wanting to go to school? Well, because of this. Okay, well, why is that? Then you keep asking it, and hopefully you get down to the root cause. And when we did that last year with our LCAP, it came down to relationships and personalization. So it kind of verified that, and it also verifies our mission statement, because our mission statement talks, and I think, I want to make sure that we're talking about our values and our mission statement, because they're really important. And the mission statement talks about having a caring and supportive environment, and we talked a lot about personalized learning, and can we do personalized learning? Well, if we can't do personalized learning, then we just need to get out of the business, because if you don't make those connections, then it doesn't matter. So when you go to Lindsay, Derek, they have personalized learning, they have voice and choice, they have a lot of those things. And it's not a perfect system, but it definitely is a lot more individualized than we're able to do right now. So to me, this just validated everything that we're doing on the right track. But thanks to you guys for all your hard work, because it was a lot of work, it was a lot of time, but it was a great team, and I think we learned a lot from it. So thanks.
Right, Trustee Aguila?
So I don't know if it's because of my background in psychology, but I've heard this before. I know that with the school district, we've known about this, but I'm so thankful that now you're in charge here, because there's one thing that you said in this presentation that I only didn't agree with, and that was when you said, I think that we can do this. And I want to say to you that I know you can.
I know we can.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Thank you.
And
I know we can.
Because we have the tools, and it's just a matter of being able to get in that toolbox and be able to use these tools. And so I root for you.
Thank you, Trustee.
Trustee Millerick?
So I'm looking at this chart.
Yep.
I'm particularly interested in foster youth. I know, having been engaged with kids at high school, and when my daughter was there, which is, I don't want to date myself, but there are kids that end up couch surfing. They are functionally homeless. They live in somebody's front living room couch, different person, week over week, day over day. How do we, clearly we're identifying homeless students as a target population. Do you count those students, or how do you assess, how do you figure out where you're going to pay attention?
So there's a specific state criteria that helps us capture that when they first register, but to your point, there are many high school students that find themselves in that state. And so when they're able to be identified that way, the system mobilizes around them. There's a lot of extra supports that they get, and that tends to be through a counselor, very aware and astute teachers who notice differences, or if kids are able to report. But it's something that at the secondary level they're very mindful of and kind of watch for those telltale signs.
Yeah, because I know that some of the students would choose not to be identified at all. They do everything they can to have their personal circumstances not affect their social standing or position on campus. And
Yep.
it's, but then bad things happen because they don't have a support structure around them, and
Yep.
abusive things go on that people don't know about or don't see.
Yep. And in the state of California, we don't have to have a child sign off that they're homeless. There's no proof. If an administrator is aware of this, they're able to mobilize those resources, and then we're looking at free lunches, discounted rates. There's a lot of opportunities for them when they apply to college, and And we, of course, as a system, have other supports for them. So
on the campus, is it true that every student has an identified teacher that they know is their advocate? Do we have a model like that, or do we try to make that happen in most cases, or do we monitor for it? Do we measure for it? I mean, I'm looking for how, I mean, in some kids, like if you're on a sports team, baseball's small, you got nine players, you know, you get to, and some extras, pretty soon you get to know everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But other kids aren't involved in those social models, and
I'm not particularly aware of the mechanisms that are in place. I believe San Marin might have recently done an audit in this, making sure that every name was highlighted on a list with teachers. But I know that it's important work to our administrators, and I know they make every effort to make sure that that takes place.
I'm clear we're all intending the very best. I mean, that's not the question. It's not intent. It's how do we make sure that somebody doesn't fall through the cracks?
And I know that's the mindset of every teacher we have working for us in Novato Unified.
And then the second thing I'd like to know is this column with the yellow boxes up and down here. The thing that you mentioned, that gets mentioned multiple times in this, is consistency. Consistency of us operating systems that are reliable and people can count on, the student can count on us because we are consistent, seems to be really important. We inform it, but then we have to be executing. And so when we're not doing our job consistently, somebody doesn't come to work because they're not feeling well that day, or we don't have an event that always happens, or then that sounds like a miss. And the consistency becomes a cornerstone that they can rely on us when they can't rely on anybody else, maybe.
Yep, absolutely. And we have kind of a kickoff event planned for when we come back to school next year that's really going to be some tone setting around this. But absolutely, it's an important reminder to all of us who work with children that we may be being at school, as much as kids eye roll about school, that may be the absolute safest and most secure place for a child from 8 to 3:30, and that their outside life could be something that is difficult for us to imagine. So, yeah. We absolutely echo that.
Anybody else? No? We'll move on. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, very much. This was great work. 2019-20 budget assumptions. And you have a copy of the presentation on your table. Are they from Cove? No.
All right, thank you. All right, tonight we're going to go have a little budget workshop around the assumptions that we're planning to use in the upcoming 2019-2020 proposed budget that you will see again along with the LCAP in June. So just to kind of remind us where we are in the budget development calendar, we're actually even on page 2. There's been a lot of stuff happening, obviously, in the budget world, including the governor's 2019-20 proposed budget that came out in January, the budget balancing process, and the very tough decisions we had to make on $1.8 million in reduction for the 2019-20 year. And now we're in April with the budget assumptions budget workshop. As we move forward, the two key dates here are the governor's May revise, middle of May, and we will hear the update to his budget, including the updated revenue numbers at the state level, and the June LCAP and budget adoption that are proposed to be adopted on the June 18th board meeting. I'm not going to go over all of the budget assumptions, but I am going to hit the key factors. The first is the LCFF COLA. In years past, I had to work really hard to explain what the gap closure was, and very complicated about what is your the goal entitlement from the state. But now we're back finally upon quote unquote full implementation of LCFF, that the COLA is back. But to note, the COLA at 3.46% projected for 1920, 2.86% for 2020-21, and 2.92% projected in 2021-22. It's really important here to note that these are just projections of a statewide number. These are not guaranteed increases to our per pupil LCFF expenditures. The second item is our LCFF supplemental grant portion. As you can see, it's increasing from $4.8 million to $5.1 million. So of the increases that we will receive in LCFF per pupil funding, approximately $300,000 will be allocated towards those additional or improved services to our unduplicated pupil counts. The third, and probably the most important number here, our projected enrollment. We're down about 160, 170 students this year, 2018-19. Another 60 next year, and then about 120 in the next 2 years for our projections. That moves into our funded ADA. If you look at 2019-20, that's about 7,200, just under 7,200. The declining enrollment portion of that number is a loss of $1.6 million out of the system due to declining enrollment for 2019-20. So those were students that we were funded for this year, but weren't actually in the system. So that decrease will come in next year's state funding. We see another $500,000 decrease related to the funded P2 ADA decrease in 2021, and that relates to the 60 less students that we're projecting for next year, and then on down the line to about $1.2 million going out the door, with the other 120 projected to be out in 2020-21. Just to reiterate, that declining enrollment is primarily due to the decrease in birth rate in Marin County starting in 2009. Just one other thing of note, down on the mandate one-time block grant. This is usually just known as the Jerry Brown one-time money. Almost every year in Jerry Brown's term, he gave the district small to considerable amounts of one-time funding. 2018-19 is no different. We received $1.3 million in one-time funding, which went to pay back old mandate payments that were owed by the state. A key noting here is all three of the out years, you don't see any projection for that. The governor Governor Newsom did not show any one-time funds in his January proposal, and it is not expected that the May revise will show any funding. So it's important to note that from 2018-19 to 19-20, we're seeing a reduction of $1.3 million due to those one-time funds not being renewed. Moving forward, I just want to hit on a couple of items on this. And as you heard me many, many times, the pension rates, PERS and STIRS. So the PERS rate that was projected and has been finalized for 2019-20 is 20.733%. Very close to the PERS rate assumptions that we'd been using at second interim. But as you look in the out years, they continue to be increasing even over the assumptions that we used at second interim. These projections are done by the CalPERS board and sent out. CalSTRS, a little bit a little bit easier, but these rates are set in statute by the legislature. They're projected to increase 1.85%, are in statute to increase 1.85% in 1920, another 1% in 2021. The STRS rates that we are using now are based on the governor's January governor's budget, which included a buy down of about 1% for the 2019, 20, and 2021 years. That buy down is not a buy down from the year before, it's a buy down of the projected increase. So instead of approximately a 2% increase in 2019-20, the governor's projecting a 1% increase in 2019-20. The current budget also includes the $1.9 or $1.8 million of approved budget solutions that the board approved in the March meeting. And the last number that I think is very important to note are the two reserve levels, the reserve level unrestricted general fund and the reserve level unrestricted general fund and Fund 17, which is our special reserve fund. In our unrestricted general fund reserve, we are projected to be at 1.898% at the end of 2021-22, which would be below the state's required 3% if the board had not put aside the funding in its special reserve fund, which has 5.35%, which is barely over the state mandated 3% reserve. This is just a list of the budget solutions that were approved by the board in March. This slide was not in the original one, so I just want to focus on it. It's based on a question that was asked me, and it's an important comparison of where we are in state unrestricted funding. When you take into consideration LCFF funding for 18-19 and one-time state funding of that 1.3 that we discussed earlier, and compare that to the 2019-20 projected funding level, we actually will be receiving less money in 2019-20 from the state than we did in 18-19. You've seen this slide before, but 2021 has now been added to it. As you can see, our demographic studies, student enrollment projections continue to see decreases as the final bubble moves through our middle school and high school. As we noted, that is approximately about 1 to 2% a year, or maybe a little over $1 million each year of decrease in funding related to that. PERS and STRS are pension increases. Since the pension reform in 2013-14 was passed, we've been increasing annually by about $1 million a year. And through 2021, we're projected to continue to do that for a total increase of $6 million annually, the impact of the STRS and PERS. When we look at our multi-year projections, I always note focus on the unrestricted side of your budget. That's the money we can use for anything. So I noted earlier before, $1.8 million is what our projected ending fund balance is. This is less than the 3% required by the state. The only reason that we're okay after that is because of those funds in Fund 17. When I look at the restricted side of our budget, these are funds that can only be used for specific uses. But the key number to look at on the restricted general fund is the line down transfers in / contributions, the line that's $11.2 million in the current year. This is the impact of those specialty funds, which primarily are special education and routine restricted maintenance funds. But as you can see, the impact to those increases each year from $11.2 million in 2018-19 to a projected $13.1 million in 2021-22. Our fund balance is projected at the end of this year to be $7.2 million. This does not include the approximately $3 million that is sitting in Fund 17. As you can note, about $2.9 million is our required state reserve, and then we have other designations for that, including LCFF funding and declining enrollment as of this point. So in terms of our identified challenges moving forward, we have a structural deficit building back up to about $2 million. We continue to see declining enrollment, and we will still project to see that over the next couple of years. The ongoing increases in STRS and PERS are a continued pressure on our budget. And now we are in basically a COLA-only environment. And so our expectations from the state is really COLA only. And when you are also seeing significant increases in the largest portion of your budget, which include those increases to the state-mandated pension rates, that COLA-only environment doesn't get you by every year. So in terms of our budgetary needs, obviously we have a lot of budgetary needs, and those are listed here. But we likely don't have enough money to meet all of our budgetary needs. And so we've made budget cuts the last couple of years, and it's very likely that we will be continuing to make significant budget cuts in the next couple of years. All right. With that, happy to open it up to questions.
Thanks for all that good news. Ay, ay, ay. Oh my gosh. Trustee Miller. Yeah.
That one, yes. So 2014 is 3 years ago, something like that.
4 years ago, yeah.
4 years ago. And this is looking a couple years into the future. And these are pretty accurate predictions because we actually have data about our community. Over the last 2 decades, when I first got on this district, it was an 8,000 student population district. So and it was bigger than that before when the Novato, the whole San Marin built up, and Novato High built up in the 50s and San Marin built up in the 70s. But it was 8,000 students. So we went from 8,000 to 7,700, which does not include the charter school. So there's another 300 kids over there. So we have been flat for 2 decades. And now we're seeing a reduction of almost 1,000 students. This is a dramatically different experience than anything I have experienced historically. These are horror stories like Stockton or Lodi or Patterson, or places that were completely gutted, or Rohnert Park, where they completely gutted the school district because people just moved out. It's a different circumstances here, but we're seeing, this to me is the root cause of a lot of what we're seeing in the slides, in terms of all of a sudden we have a $2 million deficit that we thought we had solved, that we didn't, that clearly is not solved. I mean, you take the rest of the financial charts and you draw a straight line through the numbers you got and go out another 2 years and we're in receivership. But so this is, I think this is undeniable. I think we have to not only close the school, I think we need to think about something bigger than that. And your list of nice things we want to do for the district, I think we may not be able to do things. We may not be able to, I mean, we're taking bond money and spending it. We have, I think, based on the chart you gave us last time, a quarter of the bond money has been turned in, a quarter of the authorization has been turned into bond proceeds that we're going to spend. But we're right up against the tax limit of dollars per 100,000, so we can't even cash in the rest of the bond authorization immediately. This is scary. So I guess Debbie already said that.
It is. We know that this was here, but every time we face it, it's devastating to what we're trying to achieve.
Well, and
Trustee
we have
Gasson.
to change our objectives, I believe. I believe we're
Yeah.
going to change our goals for this district. Not just close the school. I think we need to do something bigger than that.
Oh, yeah, Trustee Mack then. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ross, for bringing this. I wanted to bring up the exact same slide. That is a very steep curve. I know we're scaling, so, 7,128 is actually a bigger number than that. But anyway, that surprises me because that's new to me, right? This is a new number that's a lot lower than I expected. And also the other thing that popped for me is we're looking at another $2 million structural deficit. Again, we just fixed it, we thought. And here it is again. So it's like a game of whack-a-mole and we're just, swirling. So I'll go ahead and say it. I mean, Ross alluded to it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. We might have to look at closing 2 elementaries. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. I mean, we have to do more than possibly just one. But anyway, we'll talk about it as a group, and maybe there's better options, but can't take that off the table.
Anybody else? Oh, Trustee Gasson.
So, what I was trying to focus on, like, where can we go? What can we do? And I'm getting stuck on time limitations, and, it's a different environment working with schools. So, for me, I'm like, okay, let's grab something and let's go. I know we're going into summer break. But what I was hoping we could do is like some kind of model or timeline where we have all these things lined up. Like we've got the open possibility of housing, teacher housing. I know that takes a while. But, closing a school, the timeline of running that, if we do, these are all things that seem like they're out here in the future, but we have to figure out what we're going to do to turn this around now. So if there's a way to put all these things so we can see, or the parcel tax is the other one. If we go out early, where does that fall on the timeline in terms of being able to maybe get more revenue from that? I don't know if that makes sense, but having seen everything out so that we can figure out, okay, we need to fix this, but is there anything in the future that's going to help us, or how can we move that calendar quicker so that we can start changing? We can't go out and have a whole bunch of kids. That's not going to do anything good anyway. But so given that we've got this decline and we do have things out there showing and reflecting exactly where does this hit to make an impact to change this, because my worry now is that we're not going to be able to accomplish those things because we're maybe a little bit too late, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You?
No. Could you note actually the first one again? You noted 3 items.
Housing.
Key housing. Thank you.
And that doesn't really bring in income, but it increases the opportunities for teachers here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think on that, yes, I think we can bring back additional information of things that are potentially on the horizon, because, obviously, these don't reflect all the potential from a revenue side. I'm making sure that I've got, a basis behind the revenues that are projected. So a potential, if we were looking at a parcel tax or looking at closing a school, we have not taken those into consideration for our budgets, but we absolutely can do different scenarios where we show where we would do one of those, whether that would start in 2020-21, 2021-22, or later, and we can show some different scenarios on decisions that this board and community might make
or even
regarding
just
budget decisions.
Even just like a general timeline where we're ticking along, and if the parcel tax on this timeline kicks in here, and then when can we do whatever, if that is there, if we do housing, just to kind of get like I don't know, I'm a visual person where I want to project out and see where are we going, what's the whole stream of the time that we're looking at to figure out that a little bit better. And now I just forgot the third thing, teacher housing.
Parcel tax you noted,
because
and closing a school.
Is way out there.
I know it's way out there, but closing the school. Yeah.
It's almost like a sensitivity model, right?
Yeah.
Where you have plug different assumptions and see what happens. All the assumptions or some of them.
Yeah, I think we can work on something like that.
All right. Anybody else? Trustee Miller?
I was in the how can we get in balance as fast as possible. I can cut expenses faster than I can generate revenue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They're ugly. That's the ideal solution.
That's ugly,
but in light of, you're right, let's put it on a timeline and see where these alternatives take us, but you know.
Have the opportunity to be creative and figure out how we're gonna, I said this to somebody earlier, I felt like we're trying so hard because this isn't good. Like, we gotta latch onto some stuff to say, okay, let's see if we can't focus on this to try to uplift everything. And, you know, because cuts, we're getting down to like almost nothing. So what are those opportunities that we can change the momentum of where we're going?
We're only down to nothing if you believe we're gonna run the same kind of school district tomorrow that we're running today. If we start cutting programs, and Sacred Cows, ROTC goes, MSA goes, we go back to 30 in the class size, we completely transform the way the school district runs, it becomes more of a student mill as opposed to the kind of program that we built for this community that we're all proud of and we admire and we want to keep. But if a trustee comes in, if we go upside down and they appoint a trustee, everything I just said will happen.
I understand, and that's what I'm
This community may not be able to avoid that.
That's why I want to get the dialogue going and saying.
If we can't do it, somebody else will.
Right, and I understand that, and I'm hoping that we don't have to do that, and that's why I'm trying to look for opportunities that we can change that direction, because as soon as we start losing programs like MSA, those are the things that are keeping those kids here. I mean, it's not some kids,
Maybe
but.
they go. Look what happened in Oakland. All of a sudden, everything went to charter schools. The whole district got torn to shreds because a trustee took over because they went financially upside down.
Right.
You're imagining you can prevent that from happening, but you can't prevent it by doing nothing.
Right, and that's kind of, yeah. Am I not saying that right? No, it terrifies me to think of somebody else, because then we don't have any say. And just in terms of it's about the kids, but then it's also it undermines our whole community and the value and if we start going, it's not just the schools that are suffering, it's our whole community, so.
Just to make it awful, if a trustee took over this district and those kinds of things happen, would this community support a parcel tax? Probably not. So try another $4 million annually. We have to solve this problem. This is what we got elected to do.
Trustee Nell, and then Trustee Cooper, and then I'm going to go to our public comment.
So I'm going to approach it from somewhat of a private sector mentality, and I know the answer to these questions, and maybe we could check again, or even if we had the power of this trustee taking over. But there are things that we do that maybe we could have someone else do for us at a cheaper price, and I'll just say transportation, food, custodial, and I'm not suggesting that we're doing these things, but I feel like we have to say, can we or can't we, or how much can we push that envelope? I know it's different, but essentially when we find the market changing and we got to make changes in what it is we're producing and what we're selling, we have to outsource services that we can't maintain, that we can't afford to have on staff full-time anymore. So I'm just suggesting that, and I don't want to create a whole lot of work here, but maybe you could just address it, but are there any possibilities that that we could do things along those lines, and would it really save us any money? And then on the better side of things, it would be nice also to have, pro formas in the form of projections of sales and contract closures and some growth. So in some ways I see putting our land assets to work in the form of housing. We had one presentation, I don't know, this month, maybe 2 months ago, essentially cash flow positive as a result of developing and providing rental housing for employees. I mean, it'd be nice to, maybe that's 24, 25, but at least you could see some cash flow come into it. So I don't want to, just one trustee to give you a ton of work or whatever, but I mean, these are the things I think we need to tend to look at. And I guess In relation to Trustee Millick's question about when the state comes in and takes over, do they get to do anything that we don't get to do legally, that we can't do legally? I mean, it seems a little unfair that they get to come in and do things that they have the power to do that we don't have. And
They have some significant authority as
so
given
why
to
don't
the
we,
state.
just so, out of frustration, why don't we have the ability to do that? That's more of a opine than coming back with a serious answer to that.
Trustee Cooper?
So my only comment is that maybe can we expedite the looking into the revenue stream and doing the scheduling that Trustee Gadsden's mentioning, as well as the whatever school closure, whatever, any way we can save some additional funds. Can we expedite this? Because every time we see these slides, it's the same thing, and we keep hearing that we're at a $2 million deficit, ongoing structural deficit. So can we?
So we absolutely can, and I will put a little bit of a positive spin. We have been doing some different things. Obviously, the cuts were hard, but they are gonna produce financial benefits to the district's bottom line. But also, we've been moving forward with the marketing plan, and our early results that we've seen for that have been positive. So we're hoping these numbers are with the projections that were with our demographer, without that work that we've been doing. And so we are hopeful that will bear fruit. And, that extra $500,000 or $1 million that I noted that we were losing, maybe that's cut in half. Obviously, I'm not going to put that in our projections until those kids are here, but we are doing a lot of work on that. Last week, we heard from Charles Heath of TBWB of potentially looking at extending the current parcel tax on a couple different scenarios. And so we are doing a lot of things, I think, to try to move towards not having to do some of those really crippling cuts that Trustee Millerick noted. I do appreciate that Trustee Millerick noted that that is the best way, the only way we can guarantee that they will happen. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be working on all these other options so that, maybe cuts are, if not removed, decreased in the number that we'd have to do. So.
All right, Trustee Aguila.
Yeah, I know that we're talking about the budget and problems, and we've been talking about maybe closing a school down, and that's definitely a possibility, or two. Yep. Yeah, and so, but just want to make sure that we're still working with Measure G, and so we haven't talked about Measure G, and just to remind us that if we are going to close the school down, I mean, we want to take a look at which schools, and so that we don't fix something that we're going to close later.
Yeah.
So just mentioning that just for future.
That's right. All right, I have 3 public comment cards, and I'll just call all 3 names, and you just come up, and each of you have 3 minutes. Mary LaPlaca, Allison Nygaard, and Rebecca Campbell. Sorry, I know it's late in the evening, but this is your opportunity.
So thank you all, or hello, board members and superintendent. This is my first time at a public meeting, and it's been very informative, mostly read minutes. I do have 2 children. My daughter is in 2nd grade at Rancho Elementary, and I am concerned about school closures, and I appreciate the level of information that everyone has shared, and in terms of surveys and responding and presenting on those results and having a school closure committee. I did also know that the school closure committee did not recommend closing a school at this time. What I have heard is that there will be another school closure committee in November, potentially, with new people on that. So Again, I know you can't respond to this, but I am concerned about the cost of redoing a process and what that looks like, and why that would be potentially paid for instead of mitigating some other budget deficits. And so what I'm looking for is just, and encouraging is just a little more transparency on this topic, and maybe putting this topic on future meeting agendas. I understand it's a hot button topic, but I think that as parents, we all want to know, and we want to know what we can tell our kids or what we can't tell our kids. And I know I haven't brought my daughter into this conversation, but it's definitely something on a lot of people's mind. And I would just end in saying encouraging transparency, and in terms of like the school board goals of student success and equity and community engagement and involvement, I think that those are really tied in to these discussions.
Hi, I'm Mary LaPlaca, and I have two kids as well, both at Rancho. Allison said a lot. Thank you guys for sharing a lot of information. It's my first time at a board meeting with what we endured this past year of, is the school going to close? Is it going to be our school? Is it not? This limbo that we're going through is really, really hard as a parent, because we want the best for our kids. And knowing, where am I going to go? What's that going to look like? My daughter's talking about her friends, what that community is going to look like. And a bigger classroom size is not okay for me. And I don't know how, as a board, are we going to lose more students and an declining enrollment to go private and charter because they don't want those classroom sizes to go up to 30 plus? And that's just another reality that I had to consider this year. And I don't want to, because I love the teachers at Rancho. I love the community at Rancho. And families that we all got to know are really there. And I know it's a very difficult decision that you guys are up against with the budgets and everything like that. But if we, as a community, you guys can work with the community a little bit more on coming up with some different solutions, thinking outside the box a little bit more, utilizing some of the empty classroom space. Can we rent that out to different organizations within the school district or with other learning things? Are there any other alternatives that we can do to help solve for this? And so just as a parent, as a mom, as a community member, I know it's a drastic thing, but I just hope it doesn't come to that. So, thank you.
Oh God, here, I've been waiting 2 hours and 45 minutes for this. Okay, I got all my jitters out. Okay, cool. So my name's Rebecca Campbell. I grew up in Novato. I went to Rancho when it was a lottery school. I have 4 brothers and sisters, all of which that went to Rancho. My dad camped out, and luckily we got in. So now we're a neighborhood school. Several years ago, I purchased a home. I looked in the Pleasant Valley area, and the Rancho community is something that's extra special to me. Rancho is even better now than it was when I went there. Not only is it educationally, doing well academically, but the students are thriving socially. The students are respectful, they're inclusive of and accepting of diversity. They are critical thinkers. They are thankful. They're supportive of one another. There is something extra special about Rancho that is what it is today than even when I went to school. I can't even compare it. I have this love and passion for Rancho, and I hope, and I'm speaking on behalf of the other parents, that if we were to close a school, I feel strongly that Rancho is just, it's a pillar of the community. It has been around for many, many years. And it's a neighborhood school now where everybody has an opportunity that are in that area to, to become a part of that Rancho community. I just have a few other things the ladies spoke about is the communication about 8 months ago about the school closure. It was extremely, in an email, parents received, hey, a school might close. And And I've been overwhelmingly hearing that it may be Rancho, just through those speaking to one another, or I don't know how they know that. I don't even know if that's, one of the schools that are potentially going to close, but it's extremely, as you can see, emotional. Our kids at schools are talking about it. They're wondering where they're going to go next year. They're asking their parents, where am I going to go next year? And we will be uprooting families. Our freaking home values will probably go down. And those who don't want their kids to go to the next over neighborhood school, which is just a mile away, I don't know what the options are going to be for me. I think although it's easy to say we need to close one or two schools, there are families and children that we're talking about that are extremely invested in the school and have strong feelings toward the school. And so I think that's it. But I'm proud to be a Rancho mom, is what I'm saying. So that's all I have for you. I have 9 seconds. But I did it. I did public speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Trustee Millick.
Hi, for all three of you guys. This is personal. These are our kids. So I started as a site leadership team member because my daughter was in the 2nd grade at San Ramon Elementary School, and all of those things that this is going to be the best school, my daughter's going to get the best education, I'm going to take the extra time to get in there. My wife did the same thing. We were involved in Campfire at the time. This was the most important thing we did, was raise our kids, and we chose this town and we chose these schools. So my daughter actually was a classmate with Angela Chrysler, who you know. And my daughter teaches at Terra Linda High School in the math department. So we have grown up in this town and this community. The decisions that are economic, you can see on the board here, you're sitting in a meeting where you look at the numbers and you go, 20% of our money is being taken off by the state to backfill a pension program that the state didn't properly fund a decade ago, and that money's gone, and we have a declining enrollment issue. We can't escape some of these things. But that doesn't mean that Novato isn't the best school system around, and it doesn't mean that Angela Chrysler isn't the very best principal and that your kids aren't going to get the best. But it does mean that all three of you and every one of your friends is going to have to step up and help on the parcel tax, help figure out how this is going to work, figure out how the neighbors that are a little further from you end up going to the same campus that your kids go to. But this is where Novato comes together, and this town will do that. I did my share decades ago, and and the guy sitting right behind you did his share. His picture's up on the wall. He was a trustee before I was. You're seeing 30 years of leadership sitting in this room. You're going to take your turn. But it's going to be hard. And we can't let a trustee come and run this district, because we'll have a mess just like Oakland or Richmond's had, where in fact the school does not serve the kids, and the kids do not succeed, and they don't move into careers that are successful and lives that are successful. And so that's how it's going to be. It's going to be hard. And I'll do my part, but you're going to have to do your part too.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Millick. Trustee Gasson.
Thank you, ladies, for coming to speak, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I hear it myself. My kids are at Pleasant Valley, and I think just to summarize what's being said is something that I've been hearing myself is I think we just have to pull the Band-Aid off. Families are sitting out here wondering what we're going to do and trying to make decisions. I have 2 friends who just informed me that they're actually transferring out of the district because it's too stressful for them to wonder if they're going to Pleasant Valley. They think it's going to close. So it's not just your school. People are talking about, I hear all kinds of stuff. But I think it's a disservice. I know that there's weird timing things that we have to follow and stuff like that. But I think part of what we need to do as a board is just realize we can't keep having this lingering out there. It's undermining our ability to keep kids in our schools because they don't know what's going to happen. And these are parents of younger kids, and they want that opportunity for their kid to be at a school and to stay at the school and have their friends, and not knowing if that school is going to be that one that they can count on is really undermining a lot of our good work that we're doing.
All right, any additional comments? Okay. So this board gave direction that we wanted to revisit the school closure a few meetings ago.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah. Even if we need to have and thank you to the parents who came, we really appreciate that, and continue to come and speak your voice, and we're fine with that. That's, how we work. And so a budget workshop or something, if you need more time with the board to do a deep dive or better conversation than there's just at this table, let's schedule something.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement that that's part of what we do, so.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. Just
Yes.
lastly, the next steps are the draft of the LCAP, which will be coming, and then in June, the proposed and hopefully the adopted budget moving forward. One other, just more for the audience out in the TV, hopefully if they're watching, and to the group here. One of the things that we can do, a lot of this issue is coming down from the state. That increased pension costs to the district. If you look at it, $6 million annually by 2021. You look at it, we cut about $4 million and we've got about a $2 million deficit. So I can tell you where that deficit and that problem's coming from. And those pension levels and rates are set by the state legislature. This board has no authority or ability to negotiate those pension benefits or costs, and really advocacy at the state level is going to be important. So either some relief on that end or additional funding for schools to enable them to get through these tougher times is really going to be needed.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. This is 14C, the district reserve policy options. The board requested this, and Nancy is bringing it back. Let's look at a potential policy.
All right, thank you, Trustee Butler. This fall, the board directed me to bring back some additional information and some options around a formal reserve policy for the district. Currently, the district has a formal reserve policy, but that policy is simply the state mandated 3% reserve. So from a policy standpoint, that is our board policy, is to keep at least the state mandated 3%. So why do school districts need reserves? This is in general. Manage cash flow. That's a pretty important one. Our cash flow comes in at different times during the year, and so there's a need to have cash on hand to pay salaries at the end of each month, et cetera. Also, to mitigate the volatility in funding, address unexpected or increasing costs, save for any large purchases that might be on the IT or construction end, and obtain or maintain higher credit ratings. So in general, that's the reason school districts may need to keep reserve levels or higher levels of reserves. But very specifically to NUSD, why do we need reserve levels that may be higher than the state mandated 3%? The first is, as we noted in the thing, we're in declining enrollment. It's a volatile revenue source, going down by anywhere from $500,000 to $1.6 million a year due to those students, the declining enrollment in the system. We also noted the increases in state mandated pension contribution rates, a volatile expenditure, which is increasing in cost. We've got special education cost increases. We noted at a recent second interim that our costs to the SELPA MCOE increased $750,000 this year. We also need to manage cash flow. We've got payroll costs every month, and our revenues don't come in evenly throughout the year. So it's important for us to be able to manage our cash flow during the year. Uncertainty in flat state funding. I noted that we've moved from that gap funding where we were receiving pretty significant increases for a couple years, which we were able to cover those increases in pension increases. Well, we're not receiving those larger increases anymore. We're in a COLA-only environment now. Our reliance on local funding. As Trustee Millerick noted, we have a $4 million parcel tax that is set to expire in 2022. So if that funding goes away, that's obviously subject to the community passing a 2/3 at this point election to pass that. To address unexpected costs. You know, we've got unexpected costs. A great example of this is the district elections that we're going through right now. Those are additional costs that we didn't project into the current year budget, but we need reserves in case we need to do important work like that. The other thing is to maintain a high credit rating. We have AA+ credit rating, which was just increased a couple years ago. That's key for us as a community when we go out and we're asking for bond funding from our local community, that we're able to go out at low rates and able to save the taxpayers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars related to our higher credit rating. Just to show our unrestricted reserve, and this includes our special reserve that the board set up in Fund 17. In 2010-11, our reserve was at 22%. Unrestricted reserve was at 22% of general fund expenditures. That slowly has been decreasing, and then really kind of starting in 14-15 and 15-16, and has continued to decrease. At the end of 17-18, it was 12%. That's down 10% over just a 6-year period. And we've continued to see, project that to decrease to 10% at the end of this year and down to as low as 5% in 2021, 2022. So we've shown a decrease in that unrestricted reserve without a formal policy setting that. I noted that we don't have a formal reserve policy other than the state mandated 3%. We have had a target, a reserve target of approximately 15% of expenditures, but to be clear, that has never been a formal policy, and it was not a minimum. It was actually a target that was roughly, we wanted to keep our reserve in that level. One agency, and I should have said, I apologize, it should say Governmental Financial Officers Association's policy recommendation is a minimum of 2 months regular revenues or regular expenses in reserve. And so what that means in terms of percentages, about 17%. And it's in line with what you might expect that you should have in your own savings account, 2 to 6 months of savings. So what are some district environmental factors to consider when trying to set a reserve policy? The predictability of revenues. So that goes into our state funding, our parcel tax funding, other kind of things. Our volatility of expenditures, looking into volatility or increasing nature of our expenditures. So that could be PERS and STIRS, that could be special education, that could be other. The availability of other resources. We have some availability of other resources in our other funds, but it's pretty limited because those funds are very specialized to particular areas. And then what commitments we have. Those are our labor contracts, the commitments to our students through federal IDEA and ESSA laws and other factors. So we noted that I would bring potentially options around what the district can do in terms of setting a reserve level. So in addition, again, the state requires a 3% reserve, and that 3% reserve isn't for every single district in the state, but it is for almost all school districts in the state. You can look at a percentage of expenditures. This is the most common form of a reserve level, so you can look at an expenditure level of 10%, 15%, 20%. You also could look at a fixed dollar amount. 5, 10, 15 million. Or you could look at if a huge portion of your volatility or risk sits in a specific revenue item or expense item, you can take it as a specific, a percentage of specific revenues, like 100% of the parcel tax in case it doesn't pass going forward, 20% of LCFF funding. A district down the road in Ross has massive foundation funding. And so their reserve level is set at 100% of the foundation funding level, which is approximately, and I haven't looked at it yet, but likely $4,000 a student down there. Or you can like the Governmental Financial Officers Association, you can have it specific to an expenditure cash flow. So if cash flow is your biggest concern, then you could have it be 2 months or 3 months of operating expenses, if that is your biggest concern. So the other thing that I think is important to note when looking at a policy isn't necessarily, well, what's the right number for our district, or setting the policy. There's two other important concerns. The first is, when would we ever decide to, or sorry, how would we build the reserve? So 3 items. How would we build this reserve level? So as of right now, depending on what level the board decides if they would like to set a minimum reserve level, first you choose what level you think is appropriate for the level of risk in your district. Then you have to determine how you're going to fund that and over what period of time that you will do that. And then almost as important as all those factors is, when can you dip into those funds? At what time is it acceptable to say, you know what, the sky really is falling and we need to dip into that expenditure. And then the last is, once we've potentially dipped into those expenditures moving forward, how do we build it back up and over what time period do we move that back up? So I kind of went over a lot of that. With that, it would be my recommendation for this board to set a reserve level above the state required 3%. I think the state's requirement of a 3% budget reserve is woefully inadequate. And I think the biggest thing about that is, if we have it just down to the minimum state, then anything that changes within our budget requires immediate action. And a lot of times when you have to take immediate action, a lot of the ideas like Trustee Gasson was noting in terms of trying to find revenue, or even on a year-to-year basis, depending on where you are in the year, what expenditures you can cut. If you have to cut expenditures in the middle of the year, your options are significantly limited to potentially 10 or 15% of your budget. So I do recommend this board considering and passing a minimum reserve. I think the best example of this is just this slide right here, that we've seen from 22%, we are at 12%. And, I do expect us to decline if we don't do anything. And if we don't set a minimum reserve level, we're going to be in pretty tough shape in a couple of years. Now, I think this is the time to do it. We have time. But with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. The next phase would be taking direction and potentially coming up with some specific options.
Trustee Cooper, then Trustee Mack.
Thanks, Yancy. A couple questions and then a comment. What are our regular expenses for 2 months? 2 months worth of regular expenses. What's the dollar amount?
The dollar amount of that over 2 months of expenditures, 17% of our budget. You're talking well over $10 million. You're talking about 15 million.
Okay. Yep. And I think, so that was my only question. My comment is, I think this is a smart and frugal thing to do, is to set some sort of reserve limit or level. But I also think that once we do that, with this in mind, with the declining structural deficit that we're running, and with this slide in mind, that this is going to probably expedite whatever, because once we set that, we're going to say, no, we're not going to drop below that by continuing the structural deficit. We're going to have to do something now. Close the school, whatever it is, we're going to have to react.
Yeah, no, that I think that potentially does expedite our acts, but it also could be, is this the time in terms of declining enrollment, and that this would be one of the times that we would feel that this board feels like maybe we do go down for a couple years, but with a plan.
Right.
To build that up.
Right.
So that may be what it is. It depends on where we believe that level is. I also think that this board was very forward thinking by putting funds away in the special reserve fund, and I think that could be a great start of this reserve, and using that as potentially our fund and adding however much that we can each year to that, whether that's $100, $100,000, or $1 million that we can put into that fund. We can use that as the starting point and build from here. So I think it does expedite, because it tells us we need to stop going down, and we need to stop the bleeding. But I know that's going to be a decision that the board's and staff is going to have to help support anyways. But it doesn't have to be tomorrow we've got a 16% reserve or 20% reserve. It can be every year we will increase it by X number of dollars until we're at our reserve minimum, and then all we have to do is keep it at that level moving forward.
Trustee Mack?
Just one thought that comes to mind that helps, because a lot of this is we need to work with the public on this, right? They need to buy into this, and that's been difficult at times. Prior to me coming on, that was a big discussion. Why is it so high? Why is it so high? And you hear it, of course, from various organizations. Let's leave it at that. Anyway, what I would really recommend is that whatever we embrace as our reserve measure, it needs to be a simple, very easy to understand metric. And I am looking at these options, and I really think 2 months of operating expense, that's pretty clear. That's very relatable to the home budget of someone who's saying, yeah, I probably need 2 months of expenses as well. And as well, that number works out to about 15 million, which is probably, we're going to be is that about 18% roughly?
It's about.
Yeah, which is right about where we want to be anyway. So where I'm going is let's focus on, keep it simple in terms of the what we use to set our reserve. And then similarly, the trigger. What is the trigger? You bring up a great point. What is the trigger for us to start going into this thing? And that needs to be really clear and simple as well. And lastly, we're in it.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it already happened. But keep it simple, very simple, and because this is going to be, we have to sell this to the public as well. They have to understand it and embrace it and get behind us on it.
Trustee Nell?
Thank you for bringing this forward, and there's a lot to consider here, and I'm going to let the process, take care of itself. From my perspective, a good reserve is probably a fairly complicated thing in the end, and if it compares to anything, it compares to the set aside that you would put in place if you had the loss of particular revenue. And so in your example, you put the parcel tax and 20% of the LCAP, which may have something to do with the sudden change in our population, because the LCAP funding comes from supplemental grants based on a certain type of student. So from my perspective, when you build a reserve, you really are building it with plans to spend it when it's needed. So all those things are in place. But we're in such a situation where maybe the first thing we ought to do is set aside 2 months worth of operating capital and just leave it at that, and figure out how we're going to get there over the next 5 or 6 years. So I think we should set a policy. I think all of our reserves should be designated eventually at some point. I think we should make clear to the people who live in this town, as well as our bargaining units, what the money is for, so people don't think it's just sitting there languishing for no reason at all. So it's important to have it identified. One of the things we didn't touch on, and I'm not really sure it's that big of a problem, but the state of California has a law against us having set aside too large of a reserve. It's literally called the reserve cap, which was legislation put in place in the middle of the night, mostly by lobbyists for the California Teachers Association, that prevents districts like ours from setting aside too much money because they would rather that money be on the table for negotiations. So I think anything we do with regard to developing a reserve policy is going to have to be cross-checked against that particular law to make sure that we are not in violation of this law. So I didn't hear that brought up at all tonight, but I think we should tell the parents and the people of Novato that we might want to save a lot of money, but it might actually be illegal.
So I do want to address that item. First, I would agree in almost its entirety that bill is just bad policy. I think not only is it bad policy to limit the level of financial security for a local agency, it flies in the face of the local control that it noted that Jerry Brown, and it was the one major difference that he's moved away from that model of subsidiarity. But I will say that there was one good piece to that legislation, and it was transparency around the reserve levels. And so at our June budget adoption, we have an item there that notes why we have, what level of reserves we do have and why we have them. A lot of those same items were in this presentation. I will say that those reserve caps aren't firm reserve caps. They only are triggered in very specific situations, which haven't been triggered going forward. Those are also based on projections. And so it's not actual reserve level, it is projected reserve levels. And this board has a lot of authority over what its projections are. And so there are ways around that. And I'll be the first to say that I would recommend that we make sure that we are projecting our ways in the conservative manner that would hopefully leave that bill moot. And then lastly, we're in a county where you are also allowed a waiver around that. And our current county superintendent has made it known that her office would be giving those waivers to all districts who have a valid reason, as we do in our disclosures that we do every year at budget adoption. But I think it's a great point. There is some legal things around that. It hasn't been an issue so far, but that doesn't mean that it won't be an issue in the future.
I just would caution all of us to not underestimate the actuaries of the CTA and the way they designed this particular set of laws.
Agreed.
I have Trustee Millick, but Trustee Mack wants to tag on to that, I guess.
Actually, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then I have Trustee Gasson, though.
Yeah,
so.
a couple of points. First, I think 2 months reserves is a easily to explain, understandable home budget. What happened when the federal government shut down? What did people do in their homes? People were getting thrown out of their apartments because they didn't have even a month's worth of reserves, and the federal government was shut down. I mean, that's a reasonable number, and we've talked about this before. 1 month is not enough. The second thing is, I think you need to protect you need to think about the risk you're protecting against. And I think the biggest risk that we're protecting against is the state of California will have a bad tax year. Most of the state of California money comes from high income individuals, because the tax model is strongly biased on that. And it's really easy that the state of California could have a 10% drop in its tax income, even if the economy didn't drop 10%, if all the IPOs and those programs didn't happen for 1 year. So I think there's a huge risk that we need to assess relative to possible reduction in tax revenues in any one particular year. And it should be one of the items we measure and plan against, in addition to the 2 months. Some of those other things we have controlled. That one, I think, we're a complete victim in that process. The other thing is we start, this is more philosophical. We're talking about closing 1 or 2 or 3 schools. Say 2. Well, but one of the things that happened in Petaluma is they built a community center that was, I'm told, too big for the town to afford. And so they struggled for years, and the town's grown up to it. But for a while, it was an expensive thing to operate relative to the size of the town. They overbuilt. I'm going to propose that we have the same problem here. We are doing 2 performing arts centers. We're upgrading the science buildings. I might not argue against the fields because we're adding more fields. That's an increase, but we're trying to do it in a way that reduces maintenance costs, which is a benefit. So things that reduce maintenance costs make sense. Things that give us more physical plant to maintain, if it's a school or a performing arts center or an extra science wing, maybe, or an ROTC pavilion, maybe those are things we shouldn't be doing. Maybe if we're in a declining enrollment, declining school model, it's time for us to put our money back in our pocket. And I believe every one of those items is already under contract. Yeah, so those are done. Yeah, exactly. Those are done. But maybe it's time to start looking at everything else we've talked about in the bond plan. Say, how can we convert this into reducing operating costs versus building better or nicer physical plant? And start using that money in a way to get our operating costs down. That would include things like not building air conditioning in the school you're going to close, or not building a building that's going to have maintenance. Maybe you renovate a building that gets the maintenance costs down. But that's a rethinking of how we use our money. Because I think for a district that's only got 7,000 kids, we got too much physical plant. And closing 2 schools is one way of saying that. But there's a lot of other things that we can do to reduce costs site by site by site. So I think we got to start thinking about cost reduction to get that, because that's where we're out of control. So those are thoughts I'd like the board to reflect on as we go on this conversation. Thank you.
All right, back to Trustee Mack. Trustee Gasson, it's good. I told her no. No. She said she was good.
This is different, but I think it's important, and it kind of tags on to what Ross was just talking about. We're about to invest all this money in capital plant. It's happening. Where are we reserving, and this goes to Trustee Nell's heart, where are we reserving future replacement costs for all the plant we're building? Roof for the 2 PACs, the science buildings, re-rugging the turf fields. I know we have some, but where are we explicitly saying this will cost this many years out, it needs to be this much going in every year for each of those facilities? And then really for our older facilities as well. Obviously, like the ranch, the roof at San Ramon is an example, those sort of things, instead of just, waiting multiple years before we can afford it. And I'm guessing the answer is, well, the money's just not there, but we need to think about that as well, to be prudent. And I would think that we have an explicit plan for capital replacement, replacement, right? And we have a target for it, and we have to build that up, and we separate it from these reserves. It needs to be isolated, and I would recommend it have sub-accounts that's detailed to the campus, maybe even to the building. Then we just know, and that when people point at that, and that's why, look at that. There's a new roof coming for that old PAC at Novato High that was built 30 years ago, or whatever. So anyway.
Okay. We're talking reserve policy. Do you want some sort of direction? We've all provided some feedback.
I provided feedback. I think I can bring back some specifics. I think we've narrowed it down to a couple different options around the level.
Right.
I think the real work that maybe moving forward is after we set whatever that level is. What time period do we think is achievable to bring our reserve level to that? And then setting the board policy around when would we use the potential reserve and how would we replace it? So I'll bring some additional information in the next couple of months.
Oh, yes.
So when you do these, because I was realizing 22% is different depending on what we had during that year. So can we put numbers when you come out with numbers, and then also just always footnote, because I know the public's actually going online and looking at stuff more, footnote that the state mandate is only 3% and whatever that amounts to. I don't know what's 3%. Is it like $2 million or something?
It's about $2.8 million.
Okay. Just for a point of reference, so people can see the percentage, but also get an awareness of what the dollar amount represents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Yancy, just a quick question. The 7124 number on the prior presentation of enrollment.
Yes.
What's the portion of that that's elementary?
About 3,000.
Okay, so it's less than half.
It's less than half. Yes.
Okay.
I'm
trying to get in my head what our elementary population looks
it's
like.
6 1/4 of our 13 1/4 grades that we have, and our middle schools and high schools have about 600 to 650 kids per grade, and our elementaries have 450 to 525 a grade right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, board, we are beyond our time, but we have one more item. One of the most important of the items is this data matters that Alex is he's asleep back there. Alex, wake up.
Oh, good evening again. We're very excited. We're going to end on a very positive and exciting note. So, unlike our usual presentations where we have a beautiful stagnant slideshow, we're going to do this live so that we can walk you through what this actually looks like when you log in as a staff member, and hopefully you guys have, you can log in yourselves. But we wanted to, so that you can actually see what is the think time like, what is the profile like, what is the dashboard, and how is it manipulated. So Alex is going to showcase, and I will describe what you're looking at. So what he just did was he went to dataMatters.nusd.org, which is the location we go. You can only log in using a student's account, so an NUSD student account is how we as staff members log in. Once he gets logged in, you're going to see our initial dashboard. And the dashboard is basically a quick view. We're going to be looking only at Novato High School. When I log in or someone at the district level logs in, your dashboard is unique to you. So mine is district-wide. I see the demographics for everything district-wide. The principal of Novato High logs in. Their dashboard is just Novato High School. If I'm a teacher, I log in, I just see my own students. So the security on that is around the preferences that we establish. So right now, just to ease of time, because when you're looking at 7,000 students, the think time's a little longer. So we're going to use Novato High because it gives us a good example. So this is our dashboard. I'm going to have to talk loud for this part so I can kind of show you what you're looking at because I don't have a pointer. So our top part, if you could scroll down just a little bit more, our top part tells us all of the demographics of this population of students. So for example, at Novato High School, right at the top, you see our ELD students, our socially economic disadvantaged, free reduced, GATE, so on and so forth, all the way through. This is a dynamic page, so at any point I can click on any one of these numbers. So if I click on 7.7% or EL.
I have to do something real quick.
have to verify that the student names won't show up. This option.
That's a good note. So because we are looking at a specific school, we wanted to make sure that you're in presenter mode, which allows us to show actual data, but not have any of the demographics that would be identifying a student. No. All right, so as you can see, there's 107 EL students currently at Novato High School. This obviously would have names, so first name, last name, middle name, and their grade. So each one of those tabs, each one of those purple spots for a teacher, for an administrator, for anyone who's you click on it and you get the list of names so you know who is in that population of students. When you scroll down, you see the general overall growth, and it is a 3-year history for both CASP. So basically you're looking at reading, language, and math. You're looking at CASP results, MAP results, and LPAC results. So those are the 3 that are kind of our big overlying pieces of data. They're easy to grab. Everybody wants to know what they are kind of at a moment. And so again, this is a dynamic. So if I want to know in my class how many or who my students are, the 16% of the students at Novato High that are currently not meeting standard in CASP, there's my list. There's their grade, and here's the score. So again, at my fingertips, I have the dynamic data that I need. One of the things that we've really worked on over the course of this year, and again, Alex has delivered and brought it to life, is taking the specific common assessments that we use at each grade level and specifying this platform to allow us to look at those. So what we're seeing on this dashboard, this is something that we could find on the California dashboard, we could find on CalPads. This is pretty general public information, but we wanted it to be able to be personalized and go a little bit deeper. So for example, he had worked with at the last time the elementary teachers, and this has been rolled out to elementary. And we were looking at things like, how do we get their reading scores on there? How do we look at some of the common assessments like MARS data? And so those are what had been built out that we shared earlier this year. Our next challenge was then to move it into the secondary. And so we want to show you a little bit of the progress of where we are with that. So we're going to skip over to our, oh, actually, no, I want one nice thing. There's a new dashboard that is completely new and so exciting. This is our general dashboard, and now we've got the language proficiency dashboard. I get giddy with this. It's so exciting to have this at our fingertips. So there's a new dashboard that is specific just to our language. And so here again for Novato High School, the very top markers is what percentage are English only redesignated all the way through. Over here you can see, and Alex has been very deliberate in making sure that if there's any data points that need definition, that those definitions either pop up when you hover over it or they are defined right down below it. So you can see with our 103 EL students, the definitions. What does LTEL mean? What does EL mean? What is newcomer? Because when we say newcomer, a lot of us assume we're talking about someone who is just entered our schools. But there's actually a state requirement, so that we are making sure that our common language and our definition is shared when we're giving data, so that we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And then when you scroll down even further, here you can see the home language and the birth country of every student at Novato High School. And if you look down our home language, and I think this is always a very interesting piece of information, when we talk about ELs, there's this common assumption that that means Spanish, and we actually have a wide range of languages being spoken in our schools. And while they are, it is predominantly English and Spanish, we want to make sure that teachers have access to know, oh, this is an EL student that happens to be Portuguese or Vietnamese, so that we're really representing that. Because sometimes, and you guys know this when we look at our data, when we have a group that's so small, it doesn't get recorded publicly. And so this allows for our staff members to see, oh, I really need to be cognizant of this. Yep, absolutely. It helps us with that personalization of instruction. Okay, I think we're good on that. All right, we're going to move over to, and I'm trying to move through this, so at the end, if you guys want to see more or have questions. This is our custom reports page. And the first thing I will say to this is Alex has included so many potential tags for this. You can sort students and you can search student information in just about everything you possibly could imagine. So for tonight, we are going to focus on high school and our secondary platform. There's one coming up that I think I actually maybe squealed out loud in my office when I saw it for the first time. I did. It was loud. And so we're going to start by looking at 3 pieces. We're going to look at 12th grade students, obviously high school, and we're going to really focus on grad rate / A through G rate, because I know that's a measure that we have struggled for years to come up with some way to represent and to track on a regular basis. In addition to that, I want you to see what it looks like when we're working with an EL student versus a reclassified student versus an English-only student. And then there's one other thing that I asked Alex to use in his search, and that is that he has created a way for us to now search by student groups that aren't necessarily state-defined groups. So for example, the one that he's going to be using right now is our Marin Promise group. Every year as 9th graders, coming in 9th graders, we identify a group of students who we know are going to need extra supports to be successful their 9th grade year. And we track their information to ensure for things like, are they in a small learning community? Are they seeing a counselor on a more regular basis? Are they connected with one of our CBOs, our outside providers? And so in doing this, we can personalize our groups. So you'll see up there, he'll scroll right there at the very bottom, it says Marin Promise. When I feed those names, and it could be any kind of a group, that way every time I click that, I'm not weeding through for certain in particular kids. They're already grouped together. I can pull the data that I need with just that one tab. Okay, so he's got his demographics, and here we've got a whole group of students, and you'll notice there are 100 and something of them. And there's an eyeball over on the far side. So the first student we're gonna look at is a 12th grade student. And this is their profile. So now we have a page where we actually can see an individual profile. At the end of this, I'm also going to ask that he asks to show you the print page, because part of the work I've been so impressed with that he has built is to ensure that these pages can print on one single sheet, and they're formatted in a way that a parent could see this and a student could see this in one place. So on this page, I'm going to move away from the microphone one more time, so I'll use my big voice the best I can. Right here is one of the pieces that we've struggled with the most, this on or off track. So we wanted to start with an on-track student, so we can show you that example first in just a moment. But basically, this top section tells you everything you need for a college application. It has your SAT scores, your weighted GPA, your UC GPA, so there's always some confusion. Well, what GPA are we talking about? So he's labeled it in a way that's very clear. Total GPA, and here we go is the weighted. So then you scroll down. If the student has taken AP courses, they're there. Attendance rate, if they have referrals, if they have a suspension. MAP, this is all the data that we've already seen on the front page, all in one place. This is a student who's reclassified. Now keep in mind, this again is a very dynamic platform in which these boxes only show up if the student has that information. So reclassification summary. When were they reclassified? By which teacher? And are they currently being monitored, or have we also completed their monitoring cycle? So this information would be at the bottom of any student who's reclassified. Now if you scroll back up, another key piece that I think teachers are going to be really finding helpful is here you've got all this big data, but down the side you have their everyday data. So this is when they entered the school, grade, ethnicity, siblings at school, yes or no. Did they go to preschool? Are they in a special program? This will list special ed, redesignated, EL, GATE. If they've ever been in one of our identified programs, it'll list down the side, and then their current grades right this second. And so this is constantly updating daily as it's feeding directly from Aries.
Right out of the teacher grade book.
Right out of the teacher grade book. It's coming straight in there. So here it is. You click on track. Are you ready for this? I am. I get so excited. Look at these footprints. Okay, you're an A through G student. I'm a freshman. I now know I need to get to these lines. Every footprint is one semester you have to complete. Filled in is I've completed it with a C- or better, therefore I am A through G eligible in that class. Shaded in means I'm in it right now. And we're going to get to some where there's gray, which means that it's still to do. Now, if I were a freshman, likely you're going to see filled in, striped, and 2 grays, right? So this will march up with the student. When we get to that point, and we can log in, parents can log in, kids can log in on their phone, this can also be viewed as a home screen so that they're just tracking. So as you can see, amazing, genius. Alex has gotten us together for A through G. There will be a second tab for graduation since ours aren't aligned yet. Hopefully one day we will get to a place where they are, so that then you can click on the graduation and they can say, okay, well maybe I'm not quite on track for A through G, but let's see where I am for graduating in 4 years. That was my squeal. Okay, very exciting. This has taken years for us to be able to do. Absolutely.
I think it was just the screen before that. Is it really this? There was something about suspensions or referrals. Is that really
They've been suspended once.
Okay. It just looked like he was a great. I don't know. It looked like it wasn't.
Notice the
matching.
numbers.
Okay.
The numbers are also in different colors to ensure. So, blue, good. Yellow, stagnant. Right. So there's the here you go. Red, not met. Yellow, nearly met. Green, met. Blue, exceeded. So everything is color coded and will change. Notice, and I think a good place for you to see it because it stands out more than the rest, is that go back to where you see on track. So notice we're about to click off of this and go to another student. Notice the color of on track. So now he's going to come out of here and he's going to go to another student. This is going to be a student who is off track, but also redesignated. And you'll notice that now we're at red because it's the color that's, like not there yet. And so here you can see an example. This is a senior that we currently have, that all of these grays are areas where they are not going to meet A through G.
So Jen, one thing I noticed is this one had a PSAT, the other one had an SAT. Is it just shows the last score that they took? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's either, if they have ACTs, it'll show ACTs over PACTs. If they all they have is PACTs, then it will show.
And if they take multiple SATs, it just shows the last one they took?
It's the max score because that's what the college will take.
Perfect. You answered my question. Thank you.
Naviance is in existence. At this point, it's being used largely as the tool for them to apply to colleges and submit their letters of recommendation and reference. We are working on a new CCR platform that would include Naviance because it's a great tool that is being underutilized right now. And so we just wanted to show you one more so you could see what it looks like, because one of the great that Alex has been working on with Leslie Smith is the EL. So student who is not reclassified yet, rather than having a reclassification summary, they have their English learner summary. And so it has the date that they started as an EL student with us, the years they've been in our school, their home language, now, and their current teacher. So this is really important for us because we're really trying to tackle that LTEL, so our long-term English language students. In a dream world, when we get to that place, we shouldn't have any students that have anything greater than a 4 there. If a student enters our schools and is truly a newcomer with no language, the expectation is that they would grow 1 year's worth in 1 year. By the time they get to their 4th year, if we haven't reclassified, this lights up and will become red as an indication that we need to have an individualized language plan to ensure that we don't have students who are falling into this category that have been in our system for 6, 8, 10, 13 years and never reclassifying. So again, this is such an important piece of information to just have right out there so no one's having to go searching for it. Exactly. And then above it, you have your reclassification criteria, so you can see where they are. So as you can see right now, this student has not met their LPAC, they have not met their MAP, and they are still working, and they have pending applications in from teacher and parent conferences, which will continue to be pending until they have met the other 2. They can't reclassify without them.
Sorry if you already said this. It's very cool and lots of information. Did you mention anything about special ed kids?
So
Or
special
like
ed kids would be considered a program that you would see over on the side, but their all of their criteria is the same. We have the same assessment data. Anything that they have in addition that they would be doing would be listed up here in their profile. The only thing I think, if we had a graduation change, and I have to think about how that would look, if they had a different graduation requirement for a certificate program. And that's something that's...
So Kelly, I met with her and some other people yesterday. I'm looking at, there's all these different cool programs, and I like that this is being developed specifically for us, but I'm wondering, is she aware of all this that's going on?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just wondering if the stuff that we talked about, there could be a connection, so maybe I'll try to sync up with her, because they're looking at trying to track some stuff as well, and it seems like, not to add more work, but this might be the place of increasing the capabilities with those special needs students.
Absolutely.
And having it be, all combined, and not having the teachers go to two different places, kind of thing.
Yes, unless she's referring to SACE, which is where they have to record all of the IEPs and documentation.
I forget I'm overwhelmed with acronyms and
yeah,
other stuff.
Which is why we have the hover over definitions.
No, that's great. Actually, that was perfect for me. But so maybe I'll resync on that, because I think that's also a piece that would, the English learners important too, but that piece, if we could maybe future thinking look at.
Absolutely. All right, so that's kind of our little spring update of where we are so far. I'm very excited, but if you guys have any questions, or if there's anything else you'd like to see or have us pull just as a can it do?
Right.
My guess is a lot.
One comment, Alex, that you chose to go the extra mile and make sure this is also print ready, not just screen ready, is really first-class workmanship. And
Yeah, absolutely. I do
not
this
everybody
for a living.
bothers
This is
to
good
do
stuff.
the full testing of their workmanship, but this is very nicely done. I commend you.
So we've been talking about revenue.
Yeah.
Is this something that maybe Santa Fe School District might be interested in someday? I'm saying that half joking. This is ready for prime time, man. This is very nice. Very good.
Just if I could make a couple comments on this, and Alex's head size, I think it's a couple sizes bigger now because we keep telling him how awesome and amazing he is. But on the revenue size, we went with Schoolzilla. I think that was $50,000 a year or something like that. There's Illuminate, there's Oars. I don't care what it is. None of them work like they're supposed to. We went with Schoolzilla for 2 years. It didn't work. So basically, Alex has done everything that we've asked for elementary and for secondary. And the beauty is that teachers in real time can see how their kids are doing, and they can that monitor that feedback, which is just crucial. So thanks to you and thanks to Jen for working together. This is a system that nobody else has. The county already wants to try to steal Alex, which would make sense at some point for the county to have the whole thing. But this is how a lot of those programs like Schoolzilla and Illuminate start, because somebody starts with it or whatever. So kudos to you, Alex, for putting all this together and really listening to our teachers and our principals. Basically, we said to our principals, what are the 5 or 6 things that we want from everybody to have? They all came together, and Alex figured it out. I'd say the high school is even more difficult, but the thing with the steps to be on track and everything else, and for teachers and parents and students to get all this information in one place is seriously amazing. So we're super excited and proud about this. I'm glad we were able to end on a positive note, and thank you guys. So thanks for hanging around, and thank both of you guys for all your work. It's awesome.
Is it being used? Is it elementary? Is they using it regularly? Can you track usage? Can you?
Yeah, so we can track usage. I've been noticing the majority of use has been from our administrators and mostly our lead teachers that are pretty much taking care of collecting data and submitting reports to different state agencies or grant agencies. So I've noticed that that's where the majority of the use. I think last time I checked, in the last month, I think it was just down to 20% or so of the teachers using it. But that's considering high school teachers and secondary teachers, which don't know about it yet.
Right.
So, but I wouldn't know how many less it would be if I wouldn't count them.
Yeah,
But
right.
I do track usage. I do monitor everything just to make sure that there is no activity that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
So every page gets logged. They give it every student that gets looked at gets logged. So I've been taking a lot of steps and trying to make sure that the data is secure as much as possible. For example, none of the data is actually stored on the data matter server. It all lives locally here internally. And right. Mm-hmm. So if something were to, if data matter server were to compromise, it'll be easily to cut off and no access. So,
Right.
But yeah.
Wow, well done. I got to clap. Keep updating us if you can, some way, somehow. When does the board be able to have access to this at some point?
Ooh, that's a great point. We're planning to roll this out with our secondary teachers starting in August.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
we'll start rolling it out there. But it may be, something we could do a board workshop on and do some activities around for sure.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, that was a great way to end our board meeting. It did go long, guys. We try to keep on track. And so I just say for the next meeting, if we could really be mindful of the times that are on our agendas and be mindful of questions we ask, we can get out of here a little earlier because I'm tired and I don't work as hard as any of you guys do. So the next meeting is May 7th. We have a closed session at 6 and open session at 7. And Trustee Mack will not be here. This meeting is adjourned.